Hey, what's up? It's Cute What If this side. Today we will be seeing, what if Deku was given second chance? Now before we move ahead with the fic, leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future what ifs like this. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. That was the only sound young Mei Hatsum was filtering in, completely ignoring today's school lesson. Who cares about Hamlet and its underlying meanings? She lazily thought. All Mei wanted to do was create her precious babies. Well, students, that concludes our readings for the day, the teacher said, closing his book and stowing his reading glasses in his shirt pocket. Oh God, is he finally done talking? Mei thought, breaking her concentration away from the clock. They stood up and bowed like they usually did each day, the teacher bidding them farewell. Once he was out of the room, Mei flopped back into her seat to take out her current obsession. She kept it in a pristine box with her own signature mark, a simple pink crosshair. She opened the box and started working on her latest baby, much to the dismay of her classmates. Ugh, there she goes again. Working on one of her disasters, one of the students mocked. Stay back everyone, I think this is the one that's going to take the whole school with it. Another student cried out to the rest of the class. Don't say scary stuff like that, Sudaru. Mei rolled her eyes, ignoring their remarks. The classroom door opened up and with it everybody stood up to welcome their homeroom teacher. Except for Mei, who was still too invested in her own baby to care about anything else. The teacher slowly walked over to young Hatsum, who was top absorbed in her own work to pay attention, tinkering away on her creation with the utmost concentration. The whole room was silent to avoid being in their educator's line of fire. That didn't mean that they didn't relish in the fact that Mei was going to get in trouble. In fact, they were ecstatic that maybe she might have her lab privileges revoked, or unable to continue working on her precious babies during off-school hours. Ahem. Mei looked up to see her teacher glaring at her with his arms crossed. Well, hello there, Meijima-sensei, Mei joyfully called out, a smile on her face as she continued working diligently on her creation. Hello there, Hatsum-san, would you care to join us in class? Mei looked around to see her classmates were trying their best to hold back laughter. See, can't I just continue working on this for a little while? It seemed the class couldn't keep silent anymore as a few students gave out loud barks of laughter at Mei's plea, even more snickering quietly to themselves. No, Meijima snapped at her before quickly confiscating her gadget. A startled Mei grabbed at it wildly, like a child who just had a brand new toy taken from them. But it was already out of her reach. I'll return it to you at the end of class, and with that Meijima returned to the front of the class. Another round of pointless rambling to endure, Mei thought bitterly, arms folded as she slouched in her chair, pouting over her lost invention. But Mei was quickly proven wrong as Power Loader dropped a bombshell on her and the rest of the class. Yes, students, your ears do not deceive you. Today in assembly we will be hosting a fair to showcase your amazing talents, and we're going to be showing them off to some of the local heroes from around the area. They might be interested in making contracts with you in the future if they see that you are showing promise. The class began to squabble amongst themselves, some buzzing with excitement, while others were overcome with unease trying to pick the perfect hero tool to present. But for Mei Hatsum it was a different story. She was cranked up all the way to 11. Mei had nothing to worry about because currently sitting on Power Loader's desk was her ace in the hole, and all she had to do was give it a few tweaks here and there. Once the final bell rang, Mei sprung from her desk and leapt to her sensei's desk to demand her baby back. Power Loader wasn't willing to give in just yet, as he told her she had to wait until everybody left. It felt like an eternity waiting for her classmates to file out, until at long last everybody was gone minus her and Power Loader. The bubblegum-haired girl tried once again to snatch back her device, only for Power Loader to hold onto the box within so tightly that it would not budge. Oh come on, what the hell else could he have wanted? She thought, still trying to pry the box from the iron-clawed man. Mei, sit down, we need to have a talk. Oh my God, not another lecture. Although Mei didn't show her exasperation on her face, she was screaming internally. She sighed in defeat and dragged over a nearby chair, sitting perfectly upright and trying to show a real attempt at paying attention to him. After all, he was holding one of her babies hostage. Hatsum, it's come Principal Nezu's and my attention that there has been a lot of issues going on that we were hoping that you could clarify for us. What are you talking about? Mei, in the weeks in question, you've always come to class late or past due, in the hallways from exhaustion. In fact, nobody ever sees you in the cafeteria, so I can't assume that you've been eating. I've just been really determined to get my babies done, and stuff like eating and sleeping have no place in my busy schedule. Power Loader pinched his nose in frustration. Hatsum, that's insane. Your inventions can't be that important, can they? I happen to think so. After all, they are my babies and I have to give them all the care and attention they deserve. Mei pointed to the one currently in Power Loader's possession, especially that one. What is so special about this one? Mei leaned in close, almost like she was trying to share a secret that she didn't want anyone else to hear. Well, I don't want to play favorites. Boot, I have been working on this baby non-stop for the past few weeks. Why are you so determined to finish this? Does this have anything to do with you constantly rejecting your recommendations for the hero course? Or why you now have a change in address? Mei's usual upbeat personality was shut down instantly, and she chose to not answer his line of questions. In fact, she was getting to be pretty aggravated about her teacher prodding into her personal life. Look, Mei, you're a good student in terms of talent and promise. Sure, you've got mishaps here and there, what with the explosions. But you're pushing yourself to the limit, and I don't want a student of mine to just collapse in the middle of working with heavy machinery. Then let me just focus on my babies, okay? And I also don't want to be placed in the stupid hero course. I don't care how many recommendations my stupid hotshot dad puts in, alright. I'm sure your father only wants what he thinks is best for you. No, he doesn't. He's only doing this because I remind him so much of my mother. I'm sure Superintendent Hatsum supports your. He would rather join the Yakuza than support his daughter's dream, and that's fine. I don't need his support. Well, if that's how you truly feel, then I'll see what I can do, and I'll try to talk to Nezu about the recommendations. But you have to promise me that you'll at least take it easy, please. Feeling that he had some more understanding of his crazy student, Power Loader placed Mei's little baby on his desk, saying nothing else. Mei grabbed what was hers and headed out. Every student was gearing up, ready to show off what they had built at their time at UA. Mei had barely made it in time for the presentation. 2 large suitcases in her arms along with her little pink box. Wow, Power Loader let you participate, huh? Aw man, and here I thought we'd have a nice and explosion-free afternoon. Mei finally snapped, alright you jealous 2-bit designers, I'll show you exactly what it looks like to create true genius. She opened both containers to take out her hover soles and electric power gloves, but the response she got was just more laughter and jeers. Oh please Hatsum, everyone has seen your little contraptions. Nobody is going to be impressed with those old things. That would be the case if it wasn't for this. Mei opened her newest invention in front of her peers. It was a green disc that had a warm glow that pulsed slowly. Although they remained skeptical, they still had a rather amazed look on their faces. Some were starting to second-guess their chances of outshining her. Alright you grease monkeys, I hope you're all ready to show them your best. One of the teachers, Ms. Midnight, called out enthusiastically as she came to round them up. One by one, the students began showing off their creations to their prospective future partners. The inventor in her couldn't help but to take notes on the other students' devices, notating how she could improve them exponentially if she were to overhaul their current designs and add her own personal touch. Next up is Mei Hatsum. Mei came out in style by moonwalking with her hovering soles, her goggles on, and shooting sparks out of the gloves. Greetings everyone. I am the prodigious Mei Hatsum, creator of these amazing babies, but these little guys aren't what I'm trying to astound you all with. No, the true star of the show is this little guy. Mei showed off the green device for all to see. I call this baby the kinetic battery. Now you might be wondering what it does. Well, with it you'll never have to worry about your precious gadgets giving out in the heat of battle. This baby will power them till the day you die, which in this profession isn't long. Mei attached the battery to one of her gloves. Now behold, the inventor unleashed a maelstrom of lightning to boast the power the battery was capable of. Everything was looking good for young Hatsum. She even received a standing ovation. Thank you. Mei bowed, trying to give off the appearance to being humble when in reality she was enjoying every minute of it. Once she had enough praise, Mei tried to stop her little fireworks display, but something went wrong. Somehow the glove kept shooting out bolts of lightning without Mei's input. The only explanation Mei could conceive was that the battery was sending excess power to the glove. She began desperately trying to force the battery out. Oh crap. Sensing something was wrong, Power Loader ran up to his student. What's going on? I thought you had this under control. Do I do? Probably. Mei knew control was completely out of the question as the glove started to shake and unleashed a huge bolt that struck and demolished a nearby wall. The device seemed to power down after that. Well, at least the worst is over, right? Mei weakly smiled as chaos erupted from her audience. Midnight quickly sprang up and activated her quirk. Tearing the sleeve of her outfit, she allowed the aroma coming off her skin to wash over everyone, putting them in a peaceful sleep to stop the panic from spreading. Nerve-wracking would be putting it lightly, Mei thought, trying to describe the ambience of the room as she sat in the principal's office. Mei couldn't bring herself to look up, but she could feel the icy stares from her teachers and headmaster. Tension was finally broken when Principal Nezu spoke up. Ms. Hatsum, we understand that something went horribly wrong during your display that was beyond your control, but unfortunately we can no longer tolerate your almost daily incidents. I'm afraid we're going to have to expel you. Mei's heart sank. This wasn't happening. Maybe she could find a way to make up for this. Maybe she could clean up her mess. Or maybe she could promise to triple-check her babies before field testing. She would try anything. But she couldn't let it end like this. Unfortunately, no amount of begging and pleading could change their minds. Mei picked up the briefcases that contained her 2 signature babies, but was stopped by one of the teachers. I'm sorry, Hatsum, but unfortunately your inventions are considered school property, and we're going to have to confiscate them. No, not her babies. She couldn't lose them. She wasn't going to let this happen. She bit her lip in anger, tackling one of the teachers, and seizing her hard work. Quick, sound the alarm, one of the teachers yelled as May bolted off with her creations in hand. All Power Loader could do was watch his former student run away. May ran as hard as she could, kicking through every door that blocked her path. She had ditched the suitcases in favor of wearing her babies. The front entrance was now in sight, but of course it couldn't be that easy. The security gate began lowering. She wouldn't be able to make it time. Remembering what she saw in a movie once, she got a hit of inspiration. She tapped her hover boot on real quick, before powering it back down, using that to propel her slightly forward. She then dove into a roll and managed to just barely clear the gate before it became too low to pass through. The battery in her glove had been loosely in place since the earlier incident when she tried to force the battery out of the device. Her daring escape had jolted the battery completely loose and it fell out in the school lobby. Crap, no. She got to her knees and banged on the shutters. She even tried lifting up the steel gate to no avail. Of all things to lose, she had to lose the baby most precious to her, the one that she sacrificed so much for, just so she could keep working on it. The shutter gate began to open. May looked up to see Power Loader holding the battery. "I'm sorry it had to be like this, Hadesme. It's alright, I'm sure my father is going to have a laugh about this." She tried to smile at her own joke, but it quickly faltered. She lowered her head and asked in a small voice, "Do you mind if I have that back?" Power Loader gave her a sympathetic look before responding. "I'm sorry Hatsum, but I can't do that. I don't know how you managed to build this device. It's not made from material found in the lab and because of that we can't let you hold on to this until we can figure it out. Even then, today's events prove that it's dangerous. We might have to destroy it. That's not fair, I worked so hard on this." Being expelled was one thing, but the idea of having her babies taken from her and destroyed, especially one as important as the battery, was more than she could take. "I'm sorry, but this is what has to happen. I wish there was a way I could convince Nezu, some way to take back his decision." An idea sparked in May's head. She scrambled to her feet with fire in her eyes. What if I was able to show off my babies and prove to him the good they can do? I'll need to find a hero willing to showcase them, but that way Principal Nezu will see it was a mistake letting me go and have no choice but to bring me back in. May exclaimed earnestly, feeling so sure of herself. Power Loader wasn't entirely convinced this plan would be enough to sway Nezu, but he just didn't have it in him to turn her down and crush her spirit. I suppose that was all the confirmation she needed before trying to reach over and retake her battery. Great. Now if I could just have. "Hey you there, come back here." Two teachers had caught up with the pair and were now sprinting their way. A startled May accidentally activated the gloves, sending a shock to the battery and resulting in a small explosion. The blast was enough to send Power Loader reeling backwards, the battery still within his grasp. "Oh come on," May cursed her luck. Not willing to risk having her other children be taken, May ran for it, vowing to return for her sacred baby one day. May looked back over her shoulder at the damage she had caused, hoping that one day she'll prove her worth, and that all will be forgiven. Oof. May, not watching where she was going, had barreled headfirst into someone. Her first instinct was to check on her inventions. They were a little scuffled but nothing major. "Hey, watch where you're going. You could have damaged my..." May trailed off after getting a good look at the victim she had bumped into. She had been expecting some careless jerk, but that was far from what she was staring at now. It was just some poor sap who looked as if life had chewed him up and he had enough. His eyes looked devoid of any life. In fact, he was more of an empty husk than anything. It was just painful looking at him. "Hey, stop right there and give that stuff back. That's school property." May turned back around to see the teachers still hot on her trail. Oh crap. She faced the broken teen again and extended her arm. "Well, don't just stand there, help me out. Please be my hero." She wasn't sure why she was so willing to ask a random stranger for assistance. It just felt right. Apparently he felt the same way. He didn't bother to take the time thinking it over. He just grabbed May's hand and they made their way out together into the uncertainty. "I don't have many memories of my father, but the ones I do possess will always be treasured by me. There is one memory in particular that I will never forget. It's a memory from when I was very young, still in primary school and shortly after Kakin had denounced our friendship and labeled me as useless. I was crying to my father on our walk home from school, asking why my best friend suddenly despised me for not having a quirk and why he now acted like a jerk to everyone he met. Dad just scratched the back of his head in his usual fashion while thinking up an answer. Well, it might be because Bakugo thinks now that he has a very powerful quirk he can become as strong as All Might. But you have something better that Bakugo doesn't, Izuku." My young child mind was confused. What did I have that Kakin didn't? "What is that, Dad? You were the first one to be a hero, Izuku. You stood up for what you believe in and held your ground against bullies." That blew my mind as a child, knowing that I was considered as hero. "But Daddy, I got beat up ... and I was scared." "It's alright, Izuku. If you went down at least you did so with your head held high. Plus I'm sure you got some swings in, right?" He imitated a boxer, throwing some punches at the air and gave me a quick wink. "And no," I whimpered, dropping my gaze from him to stare at sidewalk instead. "Oh well then, that's alright, Izuku. I don't think your mother is ready to know her little baby boy is giving other kids black eyes." Dad watched me still sulking about with my head lowered and dragging my feet as we walked home. We had passed a small electronics store that had TVs in the display case that were broadcasting the local news, which was currently airing a highlight reel of our pro heroes' most courageous acts. We stopped to watch the broadcast, my eyes lit up watching the fantastic heroes earning their living. My dad looked over and saw the amazement in my eyes. He couldn't help but smile. You know, Izuku, they may not show it, but they're afraid too. Really? But how can they be, Daddy? They're big and tough superheroes. Even the strongest and toughest get scared sometime. Even All Might. Haha, especially All Might. You know, that's why he always has that big smile on his face, Izuku. He uses his fear and transforms it into a big smile to show to the world, to give others hope. That's why you'd make an excellent hero, Izuku. You faced your fear in order to help those in need, regardless if you are quirkless or not. My eyes began watering again, although this time it was not out of sadness, but rather because my father had such faith in me, even as a child. That's why I vowed no matter what, to be the hero he had always envisioned me up with his last breath. It was just an evening in the summer when my father had offered to pick up the groceries my mother needed to make dinner. I had tagged along as we didn't often get to spend much time together. Our current topic of discussion was on which hero was the strongest, Crimson Riot or All Might. Haha, Deku, you can't think All Might is that strong. Are you kidding, Dad? I bet he can beat him up with one hand behind his back. Dad just laughed at my enthusiastic response and ruffled my hair. Mom was always telling him not to mess it up, but Dad would joke and say that it was always kind of messy anyways. I didn't tell Mom, but I kind of agreed with him. I launched into a spiel about the strength of All Might. I just had to convince my dad he was the stronger of the two. My dad just smiled and watched my silly expressions as I gallivanted around talking about my all-time favorite hero for the 1000th time. In the middle of my ramblings, my dad stopped me in my tracks by throwing out his arm in front of my chest. I blinked a few times in surprise and looked ahead of us to see a man standing in our path. He wore a gray jacket with the hood up and a mask that resembled a twisted-looking wolf. Izuku, stay behind me. We took a step back, my father's eyes locked on the masked individual, and never looking away. Then I felt something behind me, someone else's hand. I looked up to see an identical wolf mask, except this person was a lot bulkier than the first mask wearer. Daddy. In the quickest I've seen my dad move, he spun around and threw a punch to the face of the man who had attempted to sneak up on me. My dad then picked me up and raced across the street, only to be met by another masked man. We changed directions and found ourselves running down an alleyway, this time to be met with a dead end. Well, looks like you're trapped, old man, the third masked person spoke up. He was smaller than the other two figures. He even sounded young enough to be a teenager. Dad set me down but pushed me back so I was still out of harm's way. Maybe now you'll think twice about sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, the smallest of them growled out. Did my dad do something that made these guys angry? My dad tried reaching for something from his back pocket but got frustrated when the object wasn't there. Well, this is embarrassing, he chuckled before taking in a huge breath of air and exhaling a huge ball of fire. I was awed by my father's quirk as I never got to see him ever use it like this before. Once the flames died down, we were able to see that one of the masked assailants caught fire and was desperately trying to put it out while the other two continued to close in on us. Dad continued to use his quirk to ward them off, however each time he would use his flame burst, the flames would get smaller in size. As the men continued to approach closer, I could see my dad waver slightly. He seemed a bit dizzy. Oh come on, how hard is it for people to notice a giant ball of fire? Dad grunted before unleashing one more breath of fire, this one being the largest one he had unleashed. One of the two approaching men jumped out of the way to narrowly avoid being hit straight on by the fireball, and was apparently too shaken to pursue us any further. That meant that only one masked man remained, although he seemed persistent and stood his ground in front of us. The flames my dad had been releasing were so hot that they had blackened some areas of the wall in the alley. My father began to cough, currently unable to produce any more flames. He regained his normal breathing for a moment and tried his quirk again, only to fail and fall into another coughing fit, this one persisting and getting worse. Man, maybe I should have listened to Inko about quitting. Haha, my old man was a smoker too. It was only a matter of time before his habit was the death of him. The remaining wolf spoke, his mask partially melted and now a deformed version of its former appearance. His hood and jacket was also burnt and torn and I could see that his body looked charred as well. And suddenly we could hear sirens in the distance. I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding and thought that hope had finally arrived. Forget it. We have to bail, the police are almost here. The biggest out the three spoke out. I peered around my father and realized that he had been the first to be struck down by my father's fire. No, the job's not done yet. The man in front of us yelled before flicking his hand and revealing a small, white blade that seemed to have formed from the palm of his hands. Dad knew what was coming. He could have done anything, try to use his quirk one last time or try to dodge the incoming stab. But what he did for me. He used his last breath to place himself squarely in front of me, hold his ground, and take the stab to his lungs, just to ensure my safety. He fell to his knees and kept his gaze locked onto his murderer. He even grabbed onto his forearms to hold him in place, waiting for the police to come. Hey, let go. The killer screamed, trying to tug his arm free. My dad spat up some blood, still holding on even as the killer started to punch him in the face. It wasn't until his cohorts came in to free him from my dad's grip that he managed to escape. They all made a run for it before any police could show up, and they didn't look back, except for my father's killer, who looked back to me and we exchanged looks. I wonder what he was thinking right then. I know what I was thinking. That I'll never forget those empty white eyes. Izuku. My dad groaned. I rushed over to his side. Daddy, I cried. Izuku, it's okay. He held my face to see my stream of tears that rained on his wounded body. But Daddy, you're hurt really badly. It's all right. I had to do whatever I could to protect you, buddy. I was trying to be like my favorite hero. Oh, All Might. No, buddy. You, Izuku Midoriya, the hero that wants to protect everyone. That's the kind of hero you're going to be, right? I shook my head in agreement, holding on to my dad. That's good, Izuku. You're going to be one amazing guy one day. I just only wish I could be there to see it. He smiled before his eyes fell closed and he stopped breathing. Daddy, I called out before the dark realization had finally hit me, and I mourned the loss of my father. The sounds of the sirens were replaced with howls of wolves in my mind. Now that I think back, I wonder if I made him proud. I did the best that I could, trying to be the hero he always wanted me to be. Hopefully I did, otherwise we're going to have an awkward conversation when we meet again. I wonder if he would have liked to have met me. I bet he would have liked her as much as Mom and I do. My only regret is that I never got to tell her how I really felt. She probably wouldn't want to hear it anyways. Maybe she'd brush it off like it was a heat of the moment kind of thing. Oh man, everything is starting to feel warm. What's going on? Izuku woke up in a cold sweat, eyes panickingly darting around taking in his unfamiliar surroundings. The first clue he got was the beeping of a heart monitor. Was he in a hospital? He blinked a few times in surprise as realization set in. This wasn't the USJ. Or UA. In fact, it wasn't even a hospital. It was home, or rather the loft May and Izuku called home. Taking a deep breath, and realizing that an intubation tube had been placed deep in this throat, Izuku raised his right hand above him and noted a combination of scars and bandages covering the entirety of his arm. I'm alive, Izuku thought wondrously. He clenched his fist tightly, the feeling reassuring him that he had once again cheated death. Now the first thing on his to-do list was to remove the invasive tube from his throat. Using both hands he pulled, using quite a bit of strength in his weakened state to remove the tube. Self-extubation turned out to be more difficult than he was expecting. The green hero did his best to push himself into a sitting position and then proceeded to start ripping of the rest of the medical equipment taped to his body. He felt a strange, heavy feeling in his chest. Placing a hand to his heart he felt some sort of bump, and it was warm. Looking around he remembered that there was a mirror somewhere in the loft. Okay, I can do this. One step at a time. Izuku took his first steps, which resembled a baby wobbling around after learning to walk for the first time. It took a while, but the young Midoriya was determined and moved his limp body in front of the mirror. An audible gasp left his lips. He couldn't believe it. On his chest was a soft green glow that was bleeding through the shirt he was wearing. He knew instantly what it was, but he had to be sure. Rather than taking his shirt off like a normal human being, in a flurry of quick movements and panic, Izuku ripped it off completely. Anxiety filled Izuku as he found the battery fused to his chest. Losing all rational thought, he grabbed the nearest item to him, one of May's flathead screwdrivers. Desperately thinking that he had to remove the battery, he drove the screwdriver right onto the edge of the battery and tried to pry it off him. As expected, he started to bleed, but this only added to Izuku's fear and caused him to start hyperventilating. Maybe if I stab as hard as I can get it in one go, he thought, now in full-fledged hysterics. Izuku braced himself, grabbing a random wash rag, balling it up, and placing it in his mouth. Raising his arm, he was ready to stab himself. That is until he was suddenly tackled. No. The intruder screamed at Izuku and then rolled around on the ground till the intruder was right on top of him, holding his stabbing arm as far away from him as possible. Still shaken from the earlier USJ attack, Izuku attempted to throw off his attacker, but this proved to be difficult due to his weakened state. His failing struggling stopped when the voice spoke again, and this time he recognized it. Izuku, stop, the voice pleaded, causing Izuku to relinquish the screwdriver. He felt tears falling on his face, and upon a closer look Izuku finally saw it was May who had stopped him. Geez, you come back to the world of the living only to try to kill yourself again. May, what's going on? What happened to everyone? A slew of questions came from the young vigilante. Alright, calm down, one at a time. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, Izuku, but first let's slow it down a bit. You just woke up, you must be hungry. I'll get you something to eat and maybe some new clothes. They retrieved a fresh set of clothes for Izuku, his favorite flannel shirt, and a simple pair of shorts. May left Izuku to change, and after he headed downstairs to meet May, he found a simple beef bowl awaiting him. He sat down next to her, hoping to get some answers first. The tension was unnerving. Neither one had said anything but just sat stewing in silence. Izuku wasn't sure what to ask first, and May didn't know where to even begin or what Izuku even remembered. Ultimately, it was May that broke the silence. I figure that we can start on big one, she said quietly, not willing to look at Izuku in the eyes, unlike the green-haired teen who was completely the opposite. You might be wondering why the battery is fused to you now. To put it simply, after your grand finale, we rushed you over to the hospital to find out that your heart, for whatever reason, wouldn't beat on its own. The thing that is now keeping your body going is that battery. Izuku clutched his chest tightly, taking the time to let it all sink in. But what made it difficult was watching Mei, who was having a harder time accepting his new condition than he was. She was shaken to her very core, taking on a deathly serious tone. He could see tears now falling onto her lap. He had to say something to ease her worry. Mei, it's going to be all right. I'll just have to learn to live with it. It will be odd being my own nightlight at first, but I'm sure I can manage. Mei snapped, slamming both hands on the table and bringing her face up to Deku's. How can you act like this is going to be okay? Her eyes were red and puffy, tears now streaming down her face. She placed both hands on Izuku's shoulders and through sobs she managed to choke out. Especially since I'm the one who made you like this. What are you saying? Mei bit her lip. She had rehearsed multiple times on how to tell Izuku everything since he was unconscious, but when she finally had the chance to tell him, everything was thrown out the window. Bibi, because I invented the battery, Izuku. She had finally confessed the truth to him. Trying to push past her tears and the self-hate she felt towards herself, she began to divulge everything to her one and only friend in life. I essentially used you. I made you help me steal back the battery. B, because I wanted to use the suit and battery to prove to those at UA that I'm not a complete screw-up. I used USJ as a stage, hoping that maybe the UA staff would notice us and they would take me back. I didn't think something like a villain raid would happen. I didn't mean for things to go so bad. I'm sorry, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku was a whirlwind of emotions. How was he supposed to act? I guess angry that his only friend had used him like the tools that she made. It seemed like the appropriate reaction, but he just couldn't bring himself to hate her. Mei had probably been in the same void that he'd been on that eventful day. He knew more than anybody that cold feeling she was in. Izuku wrapped his arms around her and held her close, throwing the young inventor off guard. It's all right, I forgive you, he whispered in her ear. WY. Izuku pushed Mei back to look her right in the eyes. It's 'cause we're partners, or did you forget? I told you that I'd help you out as much as you're helping me. I would have gone along with your plan more if you had told me everything from the start. You and me, all the way. Remember, Mei. Izuku gave off his signature smile, holding his hand out for Mei, just like she did for him. Hatsune grabbed Midoriya's hand that pulled him close together for another hug, this one a little more forceful and sending them tumbling to the floor. Izuku, you big dork, I freaking deform you and you just forgive me like that. Izuku didn't bother trying to get up, his pulse raced like a bullet train. He could feel his face turning a bright red and his emerald eyes completely fixated on her crosshairs. It took every ounce of mental energy he had to try and make a word sound remotely Japanese. It's BB because Izuku was cut off as the front door swung wide open, interrupting Izuku's confusion. The duo looked up to see who the culprit was. Hey Hatsune, I thought I'd stop by and check on you, and Deku Uraraka walked into the sight of Mei and Izuku on the ground on top of one another. Words like awkward or embarrassing weren't strong enough to describe how Izuku was feeling. Hatsune, what are you doing? This isn't proper bedside etiquette. Uraraka was sporting a fierce red blush, the same as Izuku, who at this point had broken down and started to foam at the mouth from embarrassment. Mei was the only who was completely and utterly clueless as to what exactly the fuss about. Wait, what are you doing here? Who exactly are you? Izuku asked, snapping back from his shame coma. Izuku got back on his feet, dusting himself off as he did, when he was suddenly charged at by an overzealous Uraraka. She grabbed him by the collar, nearly throttling the poor boy. Is that how you say, thanks for saving me, Uraraka-chan, from certain death or prison? Maybe next time I should have left you there. Okay, I'm sorry, please don't shake the injured, Izuku responded meekly. Uraraka gently released him, having the good grace to blush slightly at her own improper bedside etiquette. Well, I'm glad to see that you're okay. You had everybody worried. Everybody. Yeah, everyone wants to meet the mystery hero that saved the day. Don't worry, I didn't tell them your name or anything. How could I be the hero when I couldn't stop the villains? Izuku sulked, heading dropping downwards and clenching his fist to his chest. Who cares, that's for the police to handle. Plus, don't you know you managed to save all the lives of my classmates that you came across? Su-chan, Minda, Todoroki-kun, and myself. We're all really grateful to you. Haha, even my friend Ida-kun wants to shake your hand for saving me. You should be proud of that fact, Deku-kun. The brunette finished her speech, looking at Izuku earnestly. Izuku felt a warm sensation in his heart that gave him a big smile. Izuku Midoriya, the hero that wants to protect everyone. That's the kind of hero you're going to be, right? It was as if the words of his late father were ringing in his head. Izuku looked up with sense of pride. Did they find out anything about the group that attacked you guys? Izuku probed the girl for more info. Only that all the villains who were caught and arrested were small-time thugs, and that the bird creature you fought hasn't said a single word since it was finally defeated by All Might, Uraraka answered. Izuku, though hard on where he could start his investigation, until Mei broke his train of thought by nudging his shoulder and asking, are you seriously thinking of playing hero after just coming back from the dead? Why yes. Well, good luck with that, the suit is completely fried. One step forward, two steps back, Izuku thought, but he wasn't going to let it damper his spirit. Well, that's fine. I need some time to get back into fighting shape, and in that time I'm sure my amazing partner can make a new one. This time even better, right? Izuku inquired, flashing the inventor a confident smile. Mei took a deep breath. TCH, who said I haven't been working on one since your dirt nap? The young inventor rushed over to one of workstations to bring out a helmet. Bam, son. The bottom half looked like his old visor, but now she had added something to cover the rest of his head, as well as what looked like pointed dog ears on the side of the helmet. Go ahead, Izuku, put it on. Mei urged him, eager to see her new design in action. Like a child on Christmas, Izuku put the helmet on, which activated its functions immediately. The standard functions were still present in the new helmet: night vision, infrared, binoculars, and the voice changer. Izuku stood pondering what exactly had changed from the previous model when a warning prompt flashed on his screen indicating danger. Bam! Mei stuck the back of Izuku's head with a huge wrench, the force knocking him to the floor. What the hell, Hatsum? Are you trying to kill him? Uraraka yelped out, full of concern and alarm. Izuku slowly got up, surprised by the blow and staggering slightly. Hey, what was that for? The helmet is insulated with a special gel that softens huge impacts. You'll be a little disoriented, but at least you'll live. I figured I'd do more to give you a little bit more protection, plus it's great for hiding your identity. I mean, I love seeing your lush green locks, but I figure you want some more anonymity, Mei boasted while twirling the giant attempted murder weapon. Thanks, but you couldn't have given me a heads up first. I would, but you should having gotten a danger prompt. Not my fault. Those sharp reflexes of yours need to be honed some more. You can think of it as punishment for shorting out the radio the other day, Mei said, shrugging off his complaint. Sorry. Don't worry, Hatsum, it won't happen again, I promise. It better not, or else I'll make a baby to put you in the ground. You guys are too much, Uraraka intervened, before a thought came into her head. Oh, I almost forgot. Aizawa-sensei wanted me to give this to you for when you woke up. What's the point in having a secret identity if your tutor and partner just let people know? Izuku moaned in his head. And he's just okay with you knowing I'm Deku. Well, to be fair, he's kinda too tied up with his injuries to do anything about it, so he figured I could help out as long as and I repeat, keep your mouth shut, or the closest thing to a hero you'll be is a meter maid. So yay, he's cool with it. Well, here you go. It's supposed to be a type of special training program filled with skills and advice any homegrown vigilante finds useful. And he wants you to memorize the whole thing. Uraraka handed him a large book so thick that Izuku had to use both hands to grasp it, but it was also surprisingly light. This thing is massive and he wants me to go over the whole thing. That's just the first book. I'm supposed to bring 3 more tomorrow. These things are so heavy even with my quirk they aren't just floating away. Mei and Uraraka spent the rest of the evening helping Izuku catch up on past events, like the fact that Mei had to smuggle Izuku out of the hospital before he could be ID'd so nobody could ask questions about his incident. Also the fact that his mom still thinks he's helping out Aizawa and that he was just too busy to call her back. He was not eager to return to a distressed mother. Once it was getting late, Uraraka got up and headed out, stating that she had to prepare herself for UA's annual sports festival that was to debut in 3 weeks. After her departure, Izuku placed the giant tome of knowledge on his desk and caught his reflection on a chrome surface. Mei spotted him examining the helmet's appearance and made her way over to his side. You like it, Izuku? I wanted it to give you the appearance of a wolf. Why wolves, Hatsum? I don't know, guess cause they're kind of intimidating. I mean, what's more scary than a lone wolf coming at you in the dead of night, am I right? Why yay. Izuku took off his helmet and turned to face Mei, whose eyes still retained their redness from all the crying from earlier. No more secrets between us anymore, right, Mei? She nodded her head in agreement. Yeah, I promise, Izuku. Good. Cause if we can't trust each other, then what's the point of this partnership? We're in this together, until the very end. Then that means listening to each other and not taking stupid, life-threatening risks anymore, Deku. Got it, Mei. With that they shook hands, reaffirming their partnership before parting ways to prepare for Deku's fight on crime. Mei took the vigilante by surprise by giving him a quick peck on the cheek, whispering, I'm so happy you're still alive. Has stopped responding. Located far from normal civilization lies an island that is home to Tartarus, a maximum security prison built to hold dangerous villains with quirks. On a normal night all that could be heard on the outsides of the prison would be the sound of the wind and the sea, but tonight was not a normal night. Sirens filled the airwaves and searchlights lit up the darkened sky and surrounding ocean. In a matter of seconds, search boats and helicopters deployed, searching for escaped prisoners. But they wouldn't find them, because deep below the ocean floor a duo of prisoners had surrounded themselves in a sort of protective dome. One of them was extremely frightened at the thought of being caught, while the other was calm and collected and covered in blood. I don't understand why we're just waiting here when they could find us at any minute, man. We should be out there running as fast as we can, the worried one said, pacing back and forth inside the dome. You, running? Ha, that's Rich, the one creating the dome said, pointing out his partner's rather round physique. He pulled out a watch, likely stolen from the guard whose blood now covered the villain's body. No, we wait here another 5 minutes. Your friends better be here, man, I still can't believe it. You had this all figured out, huh? The riot, the access codes, even killing off the other prisoners that joined us just so we could have a better chance at escaping. I'm so close to freedom that it hurts. The cubby one relished at the thought of his new lease on life. Oh yay, does it hurt like this? The blood-soaked figure took a deep breath before screaming at the top of his lungs, pulling out a white orb from his chest that looked to be made of bone. The demented prisoner ripped open the sphere, which containing a pistol similar to that of which the guards carried. He pointed right at his frightened companion and fired 3 times, all dead center in the chest, killing him instantly. Once dead, the betrayer released his shelter, allowing water to flood over them. The killer made sure to grab the corpse of his deceased ally and swim to the surface. He was then greeted by a patrol boat with 2 guards aboard that aimed their rifles at him the moment he broke the surface. About damn time and get those things out of my face. Are you Gachai Kamamoru? One of the guards inquired, pulling the prisoner out of the water. Listen here, Gachai drew out a white-pointed blade out of his hands and threatened the guard with it. The name is Spinal Tap, got it. No, it's not. The boss says you're not allowed to use that name. He doesn't want you to attract attention with the dead man's name. Oh yeah, what's my new name then? Dekuro. The boss said that his master plan is in motion. One of his 3 sons went ahead of schedule. You are to follow their every order. I bet it was that spoiled brat, wasn't it? Whatever. Yay, I'll do the old man's bidding, but first I have score to settle with the corkless brat. Absolutely not. The boss wants you to take his orders as top priority, so set aside your petty revenge for later. Whatever. The newly dubbed Dekuro eyed the guards before asking, so which one of you boys is my size? The pair looked at each other before the silent one started to strip down, with Dekuro doing the same. After exchanging uniforms, the ex-guard was hyperventilating, trying to accept his demise. Can I just? Dekuro shot him 3 times with the same pistol he used earlier on his escapee. Is there even a soul behind those pale eyes of yours? Dekuro started to laugh at the remaining guards' question as they sped their way to the shoreline. The howling of wolves could be heard in the far-off distance. There exists a place deep in the slums where heroes rarely venture, and the law never does. In that place a lone girl lies, chained up and her spirit broken, fearing that she will never be reunited with her parents. In an adjacent room 3 thugs are lounging around, waiting expectantly for a phone call. For the ransom of their prisoner. Man, I can't believe it's taking so long for this brat's parents to give us the money. I'll be right back, I gotta piss. The kidnapper who spoke rose from his chair and made his way towards a door leading outside. You're not seriously going out there, are you? Another kidnapper muttered while tightly squeezing a set of prayer beads balled up inside his fist. The man departing for the restroom rolled his eyes before responding to his partner. You can't seriously believe in those rumors about the, what is it called, Raiden or something? Reiju, the Reiju. And yes I do, it's a vicious spirit sent to punish the wicked and the corrupt. That is why I have these ceremonial beads with me to protect myself. The superstitious man opened his palm to reveal the prayer beads he was clutching. PFFT, it's probably some rookie hero thinking he's the next up-and-coming pro. Just give it another few days and he'll get his ass kicked and give up. Just like all the others. With that the man finally left his colleagues and made his way into the alley to relieve himself. The man walked a short distance to ensure privacy for his bathroom break, all the while muttering to himself and scoffing at his colleague, haha, what the hell kind of name is Reiju? Once he finished shaking the snake he turned around to find a pair of glowing green eyes hiding behind a dark visor, staring right at him. You didn't wash your hands, the mysterious emerald-eyed loner said. The thug tried to take a swing at the crusader. Unfortunately for him, the masked man moved with such speed that the thug was struck in the jugular before he could finish his swing. The child snatcher clenched his throat in disbelief and fell to his knees. He looked up at his opponent, who followed up his attack by slamming the crook's head against the brick wall, knocking him out cold. The 2 men sitting around indoors were alerted by the sudden noise and jumped up, waiting in anticipation for the source of the noise to be revealed. The little girl being held hostage was wondering what the disturbance was about and pressed her ear against the door, hoping it would be her liberation. Both of the remaining goons were focused on the door, waiting for further signs of an intruder or for their partner to come waltzing back in. The door creaked open slightly, the sound of something rolling on the floor was heard. They looked down to see 2 small black marbles. They stood still unsure of what to make of it before they erupted into a giant blinding light with an accompanying loud bang. They were afflicted with blurry vision and a constant ringing in their ears. They staggered around the small space, holding onto the nearby furniture for balance and trying to recover and gauge what was happening amid the chaos. We gotta get out of here. The one with the prayer beads pleaded to his partner, yelling from the top of his lungs due to his impaired hearing. And not a chance, not as long we've got. The man's voice was drowned out by a loud crackling noise. The superstitious man's vision finally cleared and the first thing he saw was his partner slammed into the table with enough force to break it. To the left was the crusader responsible for all the mayhem. His body emanated a strange green electricity, as he slowly walked up to the last grunt who couldn't help but fall to his knees in fear. Reiju. 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 Was the only thing that escaped his mouth. He gazed deep into the Reiju's piercing viridian eyes, too stunned with fear to do anything. Where's the girl? Reiju spoke in a deep voice. The timid captor simply pointed to a door that had several locks on it. Reiju came up the door. He clenched his fist as it began to turn into a bright green that hummed through the energy it possessed. The electric wielder smashed through the door and ripped it out like it was cardboard. The little girl scurried to the wall, petrified of her savior's scary demeanor. Reiju put his hands up, trying his best to calm the girl down and make her feel safe. Hey, it's all right. Don't be afraid, I'm right here now. My name is Deku and I'm here to take you home to your mom and dad, okay? Deku gave her a soft smile and extended his hand slowly to rescue the little one. She hesitantly nodded before running up to the vigilante to return to her loving family. Before leaving the girls' prison, Deku turned around to face the only conscious member left. Before I leave, I need you to answer one question for me. The villain still remained on his knees and stared up at Reiju with intense fear and a sense of bewilderment in his eyes. Deku grabbed him by the shirt and pulled him up to his own eye level before asking, "Who is Jiren and where can I find him?" With another night of his vigilantism complete, Izuku Midoriya returned back to his home away from home. He tends to enter from the skylight so nobody can see him, and today was no different. He lands in the upper part of the loft, which only includes a single bed, a desk, and a small light source. Izuku removes his helmet with a sigh of relief and walks over to the edge of the railing which overlooks the rest of the building. Mei was hard at work on the lower part of the loft, probably making a new baby to contribute to Izuku's nightly exploits. "Hey, I'm back," Izuku lazily called out while making his way downstairs, excited to see what Mei was working on. The equally eager inventor turned around and momentarily sprung up for joy to see that her partner in crime had returned safe from harm's way, thanks in part to her marvelous babies. "Well, if it isn't the big scary Reiju," Mei teased, removing her goggles. "I think I'll prefer Deku if that's okay." Izuku didn't really like the rumors that were going around him calling him the Reiju or the lighting demon. They made him sound like the villains he was trying to put away. I guess it's to be expected when you make the pro heroes look bad at doing their job. Mei twirled in her chair and rolled over to Izuku, still filled with that overwhelming energy. "So how's the new suit holding up for you?" Mei asked, still in awe over the latest iteration of the suit. It was a much better upgrade from the previous build. This one was lighter and more form-fitting, which made for better maneuverability. The suit's main color was still a forest green. Mei tried explaining that the suit was made out of some sort of Kevlar polymer weave. She had made sure to add reinforcements on the joints and added extra protection on the chest to protect Izuku's heart. The gloves had to be made from the ground up as well since the old ones were toasted. The new and improved ones allowed for all sorts of tricks. For starters, the gloves could activate an advanced adhesive that could allow him to stick to almost any surface, and the gloves also contain a small taser he could fire to take out foes quietly. Izuku also requested something extra for the gloves, a function what would allow him to use the power from the battery to create bolts of lighting from the palms of his hands and decimate anything in his way. The more power he applied, the bigger the explosion, though Mei warned him adding too much power could cause a strain on the battery, and thus his heart. "It's amazing, Hatsune, it really is some of your best work. I still can't believe that Aizawa-sensei was able to give you the components needed to make it." Mei graciously accepted her praise that the young man was showering her with. "Why, thank you, my veggie-head companion. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and I couldn't believe it either. Who knew that bandage face had a heart of gold?" They both shared a laugh before he remembered he had something important to share. "Oh, I finally got somewhere with my investigation." Izuku walked over to the other side of the room where training equipment, workout gear, and other various objects were strewn about. Beyond the mess lay a small corkboard where he kept a collection of information he managed to pick up from low-level thugs. All the information was related to the USJ event. He figured an attack that widely coordinated had people talking. He glanced at his progress with a sense of pride. In the middle of his web of information were two names he gathered from Aizawa, thanks to the police. Kurogiri, he was the one able to bring in the horde of villains in the building with his portals, and Tamura Shigaraki, he was the one that almost ended his life. And now Izuku had one more name to put on his board, Jiren. "I finally found out who Jiren is. It turns out he's some sort of criminal broker able to get whatever he needs for his clients. Weapons, gear, a criminal with a specific quirk, you name it. As long as the pay is good, Jiren will deliver. And I finally got a pretty good idea of where I can find him, and I think I'm going to pay him a visit." Izuku glanced at the clock. "Crap, it's almost 8 o'clock already. I have to get going, Hatsune, I have to start my drills." As Izuku began trying to take off his suit, Mei halted him and ordered him to come back to her. "Now, Muscles, you come back here. I have to check on the thing that's keeping you ticking." Izuku took a deep breath and gulped. Even though it was necessary for her to inspect the battery every so often, it meant that she would have to get real close and inspect it, and after getting that peck from her it became difficult to be so close to her. It wasn't that he hadn't enjoyed that peck, in fact he had been a symphony of joy after his first kiss from a girl. His heart had soared from bliss, but that became part of the problem considering that now he had begun to feel strange around Mei. Young Midoriya hadn't interacted with many girls in his life from the result of low self-esteem. But he knew something was different. He just hadn't quite placed what emotion this was exactly. Was it some sort of simple crush? Or was it love? Or something more? He wasn't sure. Either way, he tried his best not to seem so quirky around her. After all, he didn't know if she felt the same way he did, and he didn't want to ruin the close bond they already shared. Alrighty then, it looks like everything seems to be in working order, but it looks like you're putting some strain on it. Stop it. She gave him a quick jab on the shoulder. You might end up shorting out. Just because it makes almost unlimited energy doesn't mean you can just overuse the poor thing. After all, it's also powering your heart, you dummy. Alright, I'll try to be more careful next time. He shot her a reassuring smile to ease his friend's worries before running off to begin his daily routine. After the end of another eventful day at UA, Aizawa sat slumped down in his chair overlooking his now destroyed classroom. He groaned in frustration watching his two most troubling students, Bakugo and Monoma, trying to clean up the room the best they could after having a little altercation earlier. Uraraka stayed as well, although she had not engaged in any violent activity, but merely stayed to catch up on schoolwork as she had been busy volunteering to help out Aizawa due to his injuries. This is such bullcrap. Why the hell do I have to do this? Bakugo spat, his anger boiling over at this apparent waste of time. He threw his broom down in protest. Because you're the idiot who can't keeping that freaking temper of yours in check. I'm the one who shouldn't be here. Monoma snapped, allowing himself to be riled up by Bakugo's outburst. What the hell are you talking about? You tried to pick a fight with me. I think you blow up the few brain cells you have left. All I did was ask you for a freaking pencil. Well, maybe you should start bring your own crap, and stop being so irresponsible. Screw you, the one day I forget and you act like I do this all the time. All it takes is one. Will you both just shut up? Aizawa was visibly shaken with anger. If he could, he would toss them around to vent his frustration. If you both don't knock it off, I swear I'll. Aizawa was cut off by the sound of his phone ringing on his desk. Uraraka picked up the phone to see who it was and was surprised to see a message from Izuku. Hey, I'm at the spot. Is everything okay? I also have something important to tell you. Call me when you can. It's from a neighbor. He wants to let you know that your cat came back home, but with a surprise. Uraraka cleverly relayed the coded message, but when she looked up at her teacher, the response was only confusion and irritation. What? Uraraka simply showed him the message. The pro hero grunted before getting up to leave, but not before turning to the only responsible student in the room. Uraraka, I need you make sure these two don't skip out on their duties. If they do, then they don't get to participate in the sports festival. Bakugo scrunched up in anger, complaining that he was training way too hard for him to be denied access to something that would further his life goal, and began attempting to clean with aggressive speed. Monoma followed quickly behind as to not be showed up. As the pro hero left, Uraraka got out her own phone to let the green-haired boy know Aizawa was on his way. Hey, round face, Bakugo called out, and the brunette looked up to find both blondes covered in filth. We're done. She was completely dumbfounded. But I just sat down, how could that be? Looking behind the boys, she found the room looking as clean as it was on their first day. Oh, well, I guess we're all free to leave then, she muttered, still unable to process their incredible ability to spruce up the place in such a short amount of time. Oh, thank goodness, I'm going to clean myself up and then I'm out of here, Monoma said, leaving the other two behind. Uraraka gathered her school items and placed them in her bag when she noticed the one-man demolition crew still staring at her with his crimson eyes. Can I help you? Uraraka stared curiously at Bakugo for a few silent moments before he suddenly slammed both hands down on the table, causing Uraraka to let out a startled yelp. He leaned forward, too close for Uraraka's comfort, to scrutinize her with his bright ruby-red eyes. Then he finally spoke, breaking the awkward tension between them. I want you to tell me about that wannabe punk, Bakugo demanded, referring to Deku. Bakugo had never gotten over his match with the vigilante, all of the progress he had made with UA, and the villains he took down at USJ. It was pointless to him if it meant he was defeated so easily by a nobody. What are you talking about? Uraraka took a few steps backwards to put space between her and the hot-headed boy, but he vaulted over the desk and approached her, closing the space between them again. You know what I am talking about, that so-called hero that just so happened to be at USJ. I'm not allowed to talk about that. She took a few more steps back, only to have him follow her step for step. He sure was persistent with this interrogation. Why the hell not? You, frog girl, icy hot, and that useless purple lump are the only ones who saw him, and none of you have said anything about it. Uraraka had run out of room to backstep and now had her back to the wall, with Bakugo placing his hands on either side of her, blocking any paths of escape. Fed up with his antics, Uraraka decided to snap back at him. Why do you care? He's just going to wipe the floor with you again anyways. This struck a nerve in the hothead as his hands started to smoke and his eyes narrowed at her. I'm not going to let some punk nobody get the best of me. The next time I see him, I'll destroy him, he threatened. Uraraka saw an opening and pushed the spiky-haired teen out of her way, and made a break for the door. Hey, get back here, we're not done yet. Bakugo made to follow her, but lost his traction and began to float in the air. Uraraka turned around to stick her tongue out at Bakugo and walked out of the room. Freaking Katsuki, what's his problem? Her face was a deep red, having Bakugo just invade her personal space, and with no shame about it either. The young heroine kept muttering to herself, irritated at her foul-mouthed classmate. "Excuse me." The gravity manipulator snapped out of her flustered mode to turn around and see another student on the other side of the hall. He had messy purple hair and his eyes kind of reminded her of Aizawa's, constantly tired, and he even spoke in a very similar monotone voice. Yes, can I help you? Yeah, you're in class 1A, right? Yay, and you are." She was confused as to what exactly her lavender-headed classmate was going to request of her. She was a bit weary after that previous confrontation. "Guess I should introduce myself. My name is Hitoshi Shinso, I'm in class 1B. I was hoping that you could answer a question of mine. I'm sorry, but I'm kind of in a hurry right now. Please, it would only take a second." Shinso persisted. Uraraka looked at her watch and sighed. She had plans to go over and hang out with Ida after helping out Aizawa, but since the boys did finish cleaning early, she figured she had time to help out this student. Sure, what is it? I know it must be hard for you to talk about, but I wanted to ask you guys about the incident you guys had at USJ. It was no secret that ever since the incident happened, other students has become increasingly interested in Class 1A, especially with the festival coming up in 2 days. Students had want to know everything on her and her classmates' quirks, hoping to get an edge on them. I'm sorry, the headmaster Nizu told us we aren't really allowed to talk about it, what with it being a police investigation. Thinking she had dodged the question entirely, she began to casually walk away until Shinso said something that caught her attention. Not even about the mystery hero, the one who supposedly saved Class 1A. Uraraka spun back around, stunned. How would he know that? After all, nobody was supposed to know of Deku's involvement in the incident. Only Tsu, Todoroki, Mainta, and herself were the only ones to know. Even her own classmates weren't actually supposed to know anything at all about him. You must have misheard, I don't know anything about him. Shinso cracked a small smile. So it's a guy, huh? The small UA. Student smacked her hands over her mouth feeling like she just screwed up. That's not what I meant to say. Uraraka's body suddenly went numb, her arms falling to her sides and somehow feeling like she was a prisoner in her own body. All right, I'm done prodding around. I want some real answers, Shinso demanded. Now, nod your head if you know who the hero is. With her own body following his will, Uraraka nodded. Good, now nod if you know where he is. She did so accordingly and the brainwasher took a deep breath. I'm sorry for doing this, I really don't like use my quirk like this unless I absolutely have to, so this will be the last thing I require from you. Take me to him. Internally the brunette was in all-out panic mode, knowing that she was about to blow Izuku and Mei's secret. She had to do something, anything to get out of this state. She was desperately trying to regain control of her own body. Slam. The door to Class 1A swung wide open and a startled Shinso released Uraraka from his quirk, and quickly retreated out of sight, but near enough to eavesdrop on the pair. Uraraka dropped to the ground at the suddenness of having full control of her body once again. Bakugo was still floating in the air, but was using pencils he stabbed into the ground as an anchor to keep himself from drifting too high up. Damn it, round face, get over here and cancel your freaking quirk. He looked over to find her laying on the floor. What the hell? He stabbed his way over to check up on her. Hey, are you alright? Asked in a surprisingly soft tone. The spiky-haired grenade grunted and cursed under his breath. He released one hand from his grip on his pencil to gently shake her. When she gave no reaction, he feared the worst, thinking that there was a possibility that a villain was loose on campus. After the USJ incident, it didn't seem so out of the question. The spiky-haired boy cursed his current floating predicament, but decided that his odds of facing a possible villains would be greatly improved if he could maneuver on the ground, rather than in zero gravity. In order to do that, he needed to determine Uraraka's condition. He managed to maneuver a little closer to her and placed his ear up right up to Uraraka's chest, to see if he could detect any source of heartbeat. Luckily he found one. Now he just needed to think of a way to wake her, but before he could figure out a plan, her heartbeat started to rapidly increase. He slowly looked up to find his classmate wide awake and staring right at him with a flustered expression. What are you doing? She demanded of Bakugo and he flinched back, accidentally letting go of the tools that kept him anchored. Wait, it's not what you freaking think. Who the hell do you think I am, that freaking purple lump? I just saw you on the ground and was checking on you. Just put me the hell down, he shouted back at her. The rose-cheeked girl angrily compiled and released him from his zero-gravity curse, dropping him to the ground instantly. About damn time, Bakugo grunted, getting up slowly from the ground. Uraraka turned toward Bakugo and, face still flushed, snapped, Is that how you say thank you? Bakugo Katsuki, you're nothing but a delinquent. Well, if I'm such a delinquent, maybe I'll just leave you on the floor the next time you pass out from your own quirk. I didn't pass out from my quirk, you dolt. I passed out because… Oh crap. It started to all come back for Uraraka. She panicked and took out her phone to inform Izuku about this new development. What the hell are you doing? We're having a conversation. I have to let my friend Deku know I might have messed something up. The gravity user was typing furiously on her phone, not fully realizing what she had just said out loud. As she was crafting the message to Izuku, Bakugo placed his hands on Uraraka's phone and closed it. Uraraka looked up to see Bakugo had a complete look of disgust in his eyes. What the hell did you just say? Uraraka had a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. Around the corner, however, Shinso had his back hugged against the wall, still listening intently to the pair's conversation. So, his name is Deku, is it? As Izuku waited for his sensei to arrive, he took the time to squeeze in some basic workouts. He took every wake minute to better himself, whether through body or mind. If he wasn't donning the suit, he was pushing himself to his limit. You're going to burn yourself out if you don't take time to rest every once in a while. The young hero looked up from his push-ups to find his mummy-wrapped sensei standing over him. I'm just trying to get myself to be at my peak. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? According to the greasehead, you spend almost every waking hour diving into your hero work, testing your new gadgets, or learning new martial arts and tactics. The most you spend resting is when you check on your mother or the 2 hours of sleep you get. Izuku scratched the back of head, a little bit embarrassed to know that Mei had kept track of his daily routine. I understand that just because you're quirkless you have to work twice as hard. But it's alright to take it easy every once in a while. Remember, you're still young. I'm sure being a hero isn't the only thing on your mind. Other things. The green hero tried to think what else could occupy his mind, but he really only thought of his investigation. While Izuku was deep in thought, the memory of the peck came creeping up in his mind, making him instinctively cover his face. Sorry, can't really think of anything that interests me at this time. Izuku's muffled shout just made Aizawa shake his head in disbelief. He could tell his protege was lying, but he didn't bother pressing the issue any further. Alright then, let's begin with our basics. Their training lasted until dusk and left Izuku panting and exhausted from his workout. He cooled off by splashing ice-cold water on the back of his head. I'm very impressed on how much you've grown in such a short time. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei, I really am giving it my all. Although Aizawa didn't show, he was smiling internally, satisfied at the amount of progress Izuku had made. His apprentice was a far cry from the day they first met. So I finally got somewhere in my investigation, Izuku told his sensei, puffing out his chest with a sense of pride. You mean the investigation I told you to leave to the police? I understand that, but I think I really made some progress. I managed to find out that a man by the name of Jiren was in charge of gathering so many of the villains responsible for the attack. What's more, I found out that he conducts business out of a bar called Nishiguchi. Even though Aizawa was amazed by Izuku's detective work, he knew he had to shut his protege down before he did something reckless and got himself killed. Aizawa knew firsthand how dangerous Jiren was, and that wasn't something he wanted Izuku to get dragged even more into. That's great, Midoriya. I'll let the police know through an anonymous source. In the meantime, I want you to promise me you won't try anything stupid. It was heartbreaking for the young hero to know his sensei denied him the right to bring in his suspect after all the hard work he put in. After all, what was the point of him training so hard if he was just going to sit in the sidelines? Fine. He reluctantly agreed, but Aizawa had trouble believing on whether or not he would keep his word. Let's call it a night, try to get some sleep, and no hero work tonight, Aizawa sternly told his apprentice, to which Izuku just silently nodded in agreement. After bowing and saying his farewells, Izuku made his way home, wallowing in resentment. Once home, Izuku was welcomed with a small blast of confetti, startling him into a defensive stance. Welcome home, Izuku. After realizing it was only Mei, Izuku relaxed back into a normal standing position, but kept his hand over his heart, which was slowing into a normal rhythm again after that scare. Haha, sorry for startling you, but I wanted to surprise you. After all, it's time for a celebration. What are we celebrating? Izuku questioned his friend, a little clueless as to the occasion. Wow, what kind of partner are you? Forgetting our 2-month anniversary. Mei feigned hurt and dramatically threw her hand over her chest in a faux display of shock. We would have had a 1-month celebration, but the whole you being in a coma thing kinda put a damper on that plan. But I figure better late than never, right? A small smile ran across Izuku's face. He was happy to know that Mei cherished their friendship enough to remember such an important day. Meanwhile, he felt like a fool for forgetting. Sorry, Hatsum, I got so caught up in my work that I completely spaced. I should make us something good for dinner tonight then. The young inventor placed her hand in front of her partner, still filled with that unlimited energy. You better, and to commemorate this joyous occasion I made you these. She handed him a box that contained what she calls their company logo, a green crosshair with an HM in the middle. Izuku opened the box carefully to reveal its contents. 3 gadgets. These look cool, Mei. Are these the ones I asked you to make? That's correct. Your gas-powered grappling hook, foam grenades, and my personal favorite, gel bombs. Now you can go and seriously kick some butt with these. Izuku smiled, happy with his partner's hard work. They kicked off their celebration with Izuku making dinner and Mei attempting to help. But really she was just making a mess. He laughed it off, joking that while she can make high-quality gadgets and weapons, making something as simple as onigiri or miso soup was way out of her league. As the evening went on, Mei began to suspect that something was on her partner's mind by the way he acted. He was usually good at hiding whatever was bothering him, but he kept getting more and more distracted as the night went on. So, what's bothering the Reiju? She finally asked, trying to keep her voice lighthearted and teasing. but still hoping for an honest answer. And nothing's bothering me, what do you mean? Izuku, you've been staring at that fish for the past 10 minutes, clearly something's up. Oh, yay. Well, I told Aizawa about the information I gathered about Jiren, and while he was impressed with what I've learned, he wants me to step aside and let the police take him in instead. Mei slammed her drink down, infuriated by Aizawa's decision and startling the poor boy out of his depressive state. Well, that's a load of crap. I mean, you worked your butt off grilling lowlives for weeks straight, and now he's telling you to just back off and let the police and some other hero take credit for your hard work. Maybe he's got a point. He thinks Jiren is too dangerous for someone like me to handle on my own. PFFT, I've seen you take down guys twice your size with quirks more dangerous than most heroes, and that's when you were recovering. If anyone can do it, even with their hands behind their back, it's the Reiju hero, Deku. Izuku nodded and stood up, now filled with a fiery determination to take on this mastermind himself. You're right, then tomorrow I'll find him and make him tell me what he knows. Mei also got up with the same fortitude. Hell yeah, let's go Team Deku, she yelled as they both fist bumped. The next night Izuku made his way to the train station to begin his search for Jiren. He spent the entirety of his ride reviewing all the information he had collected up until now, and then departed at his stop. It didn't take him long to be amazed at the city around him. After all, he had never traveled to a different city by himself before, let alone one as big as Yokohama City. Wow, Hatsum, this place is huge. I don't even know where to begin, to be honest, Izuku admitted, feeling just a tad bit overwhelmed. Don't worry, my grass-haired companion, I'll help you out. Mei began searching for information online that could lead them to Jiren's place of business as Izuku ventured into the city. He hadn't changed into his hero suit yet, so he approached people nearby, asking where he could find the Nishiguchi. He made up a story of how he was searching for his father who hadn't been home in a while, and while people were sympathetic to his cause, they were unable to help in his quest. It seems that no one in this city had even heard of such a place. Mei was also unable to find anything of note. No website, no review, not even in someone's mention in a social media post, and this just baffled the duo. Izuku had gotten this information from a villain. Was it possible he was lied to? He started to think of the possibility that maybe he had screwed up, or worse, possibly alerted Jiren that he was on his trail. After all, he wasn't really subtle with his form of questioning. As he continued to venture deeper into the city, he overheard what sounded like a struggle going on in an alleyway. At least I have something to take out my aggression on. Izuku went to the nearest secluded area to change into his suit, then made his way over to investigate. In the alleyway, 5 individuals surrounded one lone man who was wearing a black t-shirt with body armor on top, a large brown trench coat, blue jeans, and on his hands a huge set of brass knuckles, and to conceal his identity he wore a black mask that wrapped around the top part of his face. The group of assailants were feeling very confident in their ability to dispose of their lone enemy. All right, we've finally caught up to the infamous Knuckleduster. You're kind of a hard man to track down. The lone man, now identified as Knuckleduster, kept his composure and didn't even react like he was in any kind of danger. He crossed his arms and took a deep breath, seemingly out of annoyance. Are you all so weak that you need 5 of yourselves to try and take me on? That's pretty pathetic. He grunted in a very gravelly voice. Shut up. One of the thugs launched themselves at Knuckleduster, only to be stopped by a quick flash of lightning. Deku sprang in between the 2 men and delivered a kick to the thug's face, sending him flying into another baddie. Hey there, it looked like you need saving. The young vigilante stood up and looked at the older hero. He seemed more annoyed at his presence rather than thankful. Man, how are these guys are never thankful, he thought. I don't need saving from some young punk. The remaining 3 started to rush them, thinking they could still take them on if they concentrated their efforts. Deku tackled one of the villains to the ground and started to wail on him, while the other 2 villains dogpiled on Knuckleduster, grabbing both of his arms. One of the villains attached to Knuckleduster took a deep breath. His eyes started to shoot out a beam of red light grazing the older man. Knuckleduster grabbed the other villain attached to him and smashed them together, knocking out the latter villain. As Deku let out a barrage of blows against his opponent, they were able to block one of his attacks and struck the Reiju right in the face with a palm strike. They then smacked both hands on the side of his head and activated their quirk. A sonic wave emitted from his palms. Deku screamed in agony while Mei on the other end threw her head back in reaction to the sound and quickly lowered the volume in what she was receiving. The green hero backed up to escape the pain just as the villain got up to try and send another wave of sound at the vigilante. Deku rushed the villain, grabbing his arm with one hand while also dodging an attack from the villain's free hand. Deku used his elbow to place pressure on his foe's neck, trying to make his enemy pass out. Struggling to try and free himself, the thug placed his free hand once more on Deku's face, and emitted a strong burst of sound directly to the side of Izuku's head. The hero tried to desperately hold on, counting the seconds in his head to blacking out his foe. As the sound raged on, Deku's ears started to bleed. Wanting the noise to stop, he headbutted his foe with all his might and managed to knock him out cold. He let go of the defeated enemy to try and take a small breather, staggering from the loud noise with every movement. The young hero looked up to see that Knuckleduster has disposed of his other foe. The tall brooding man looked down at the Reiju, curious as to who he was. So, who the hell are you? What? Sorry, there's just a loud ringing noise in my head. Just give me a sec. The hulking man placed his hand over the young boy's mouth, gesturing for him to shut up. Be quiet, you idiot. You might alert any other surprises they might have nearby. He released Deku from his grip and began to walk away. Hey, wait. Deku called out softly and ran right in front of this new hero, trying to get his attention only for the menacing veteran to simply brush him aside. Strong guy, he thought. Wait, where are you going? Don't you have to wait for the police to come? Why would I do that? I thought all pros had to stand by till law enforcement came. Knuckleduster looked at Deku, peeved at the wolf-like hero's constant questions. Do I look like a pro hero to you? Deku started to think over his vast knowledge of pros that he knew. It occurred to him that he never did remember seeing one that looked so intimidating before. Are you a vigilante? Deku didn't seem to be picking up on the hints to back off and kept on questioning his new acquaintance. What the hell do you think? He spat out, very aggravated. Cool, so am I. Knuckleduster flinched at his cheerful optimism. His happy upbeat tone didn't match his dark-looking helmet. Once again he tried to walk away from the younger outlaw hero before he could ask another question. Too late. Hey, do you mind if I ask you something? Look kid, I'm kind of busy right now, alright? I don't have time to play hero with some little kid. Deku took offense to that. He placed his hand on the vigilante's shoulder in an attempt to forcefully grab his attention. Having finally had enough, Knuckleduster snapped and turned around and attempted to punch the young hero. Deku had to use both hands, but he managed to stop the man's fist. How, bad mistake. Knuckleduster told Izuku before his gloves shot electricity from the knuckles, tasering the younger hero. Deku screamed through the pain but still held on. Once he figured the younger vigilante had enough, he ceased his attack looking at his younger counterpart who was smoking slightly from the shock. Haha, that's cool, but mine are better. Deku looked up to the veteran with his bright green eyes shining through his visor. He grabbed Knuckleduster's fist with an open palm and returned with his own lighting, shorting out the older hero's weapon. Knuckleduster looked at his glove in disbelief, wondering just who exactly was this kid that just flashed out of the blue. What's your name, kid? He asked. It's Deku, sir. What's a kid like you doing trying to play hero this young? Don't they have schools for brats like you? Deku tried to think of a quick excuse to cover his tracks. I just didn't make the cut is all. I just really wanted to be a hero, sir, and I wasn't going to let something as trivial as not getting accepted into a certain school get me down. Deku looked down at his hands, clenching them shut. All I want to do is help people and I'll find a way to do that, one way or another. Crap, not another one, Knuckleduster muttered to himself. Look kid, I'm only going to tell you this once. Quit while you're still green, you have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Being a hero isn't what it's marketed as, all it brings is pain and suffering. People with attitudes like yours don't have what it takes to be heroes. Hearing those words again, the same words that All Might had said to him, still stung, but this Deku was just going to smile through it. Sorry, I've already heard that speech before and I've made up my mind, he said, full of confidence. Knuckleduster looked at Deku, knowing the young hero had a smile plastered across his face. I just have one question to ask you, sir. What's that? Although the older man didn't seem overly pleased with another question from Deku, he seemed resigned to just answer them, probably hoping he'd run out of questions and leave him alone already. You seem like you know your way around. Do you know where I could find the Nishiguchi? The trenchcoat hero seemed confused at the question. Why would this kid want to go there of all places? Sure, it's right down the street. Then you want to take a left, followed by a right. It's not really advertised, but when you see what looks like a butcher's shop, it's right next door to it. Deku was pleased that he was finally getting somewhere with his quest. He bowed at his elder before following Knuckleduster's directions. Hey wait, why do you even want to go there? Everybody knows that's a villain's bar. Deku turned around, still running in the same direction to answer. I have to look for someone named Jiren and ask him a few questions. Deku shouted out before cutting the corner away from the older hero's view. Once out of the Rouge hero's line of sight, Deku asked May to do some quick snooping. Jiren, is he trying to get himself killed? Knuckleduster asked himself quietly as he contemplated stopping Deku. He didn't really want to get involved with another young hero, not after what happened to the last one he tried to mentor. He looked at his broken piece of armor, wondering if he should just move on. But there was too much conflict within himself to just move on that easily. But Deku did remind him a lot of Koichi. Fine, I'll just make sure he doesn't get himself killed. Knuckleduster made to follow after Deku when he was surprise tackled by one of the thugs who clung onto the masked hero with all his might. Your little friend has a lot of nerve trying to get in between us. Once I'm done with you though, he's next. Knuckleduster gritted his teeth before responding. Not on your life. He was then able to grab the thug by the back and throw him on the ground. Struggling with his injuries, the punk took out his cell phone, probably to try to call for backup. Knuckleduster stomped on his hand, smashing the phone to bits, and then kneeled down as the villain sat up screaming in pain over his now broken hand. The rogue hero took this opportunity to grab the writhing villain by the neck. As he struggled in vain to free himself, Knuckleduster reached out and swiftly snapped the low-life's neck, killing him instantly. Deku slowly approached the building that housed the bar, observing that the bar seemed to be located on the 3rd floor, while the lower levels appeared to be housing units, although that could be nothing more than a front for the bar's security, and to the left of it, just like Knuckleduster said, a butcher's shop. It seems to be 1 floor lower than the bar. Deku observed the area, and across the street from the bar he noticed a tall building that would give him the high ground to scope out the area better. He rushed over to the building and activated his suit's synthetic adhesive gloves as a quieter option of scaling the building rather than using his grappling hook. "So I got that information that you asked for, Deku," Mei said, still trying to recover from the sound blast. "What's up?" Through a window, Deku was able to see at least 4 people inside the bar from his new advantageous position. He was trying to determine which one could be Jiren. "So based on what I could find, it seems like our new tall, dark, and moody friend was a big deal back then. He used to roll with a 3-man group of vigilantes taking down guys who used that drug, Trigger." "Oh yay, what happened to his group?" Deku asked while still observing the Partons inside. He was checking their mannerisms to see if he could find someone who fit Jiren's profile, and he had found one. His target had on purple blazer with matching pants, gray hair, and it looked like he was missing his front tooth. This guy was just screaming sleazeball. It made Deku feel irate that this guy was responsible for almost killing high schoolers, and here he was just having a drink and smoking without a care in the world. "Well, they're dead, Deku. They died about 1.5 years ago. They seem to be around our age actually. Since then it seems like he went underground for the most part, only popping up here and there," Mei said, looking over random news articles she had found. "That explains his cheerful attitude towards me. He probably doesn't want to see another young would-be hero run right into his death." Deku never really thought about the danger that he actually puts himself through. Death to him was just something that came with the territory of his job. He always told himself that as long as he went down helping those around him, it would all be okay for him in the end. Deku, it seems like he's also the suspect in a lot of villain killings. So far, 56 of them, and that may not even be all of them. Her tone shifted to that of worry, and Deku caught on quick something was bothering her. "What's wrong, Mei? Just promise me you won't turn out to be like this guy." "Hey, who do you think you're talking to?" "Of course I won't, I promise." Deku reached for the top of his ears, allowing him to listen in on conversations despite the distance between them, and kept him focused right on Jiren. Just then a very meek-looking man came into the room. He was dressed as an average businessman, complete with a tie and suitcase. He looked like he could just so easily blend in with the crowd. The man sat right across from Jiren. Deku got the feeling that he was about to watch one of Jiren's meetings take place. "So, is everything set for later tonight?" The businessman spoke in a rather authoritative tone. Jiren sported a huge grin that stretched from ear to ear. "You better believe everything is set. All you guys have to do is just come down by the docks and pick up your juice." Jiren took a puff of his cigarette before putting it out. He then eyed the man's suitcase with glee. "Now, let's talk payment." The suited man got up and began to open his briefcase. He revealed the contents to Jiren, and his smile grew even wider. Deku's stomach churned as he got a first-hand look at Jiren's immense greed. "There's 1 million in cash right now, another." Jiren got up and in protest, slamming his hands on the table. "What's the big idea? The deal was for 2 million total." The men around Jiren started to unsheath their weapons as well, beginning to activating their quirks. The suited man, however, was not at all threatened. "I assure you that the other 1 million will be delivered to you once we pick up our supplies. After all, we don't want an outburst between us." Apparently this answer was good enough for Jiren, let out a crackling laugh, unable to control his joy. "Kek, I can't believe you guys are willing to pay this much over some chemicals. This is the biggest gig I've done. What the hell do you guys need this stuff for anyways?" Jiren questioned, his eyes never moving from the briefcase. The businessman stood up and adjusted his tie, then cleared his throat to regain Jiren's attention before speaking. "I'm sorry, but the money also ensures our privacy. Now, good day to you, and may we do business some other time." With that he bowed his head and left a very content Jiren. Once the businessman had left the establishment, Deku thought it was about time he made a move. He took out 2 explosive gels and winded up his pitching arm. "All right, Mei, it's showtime. Good luck, and come back in one piece, Izuku." Deku hurled the gel capsules at the widow of the bar, making them spat onto the glass. One of the bar patrons was sitting near the window and became startled by the sudden noise, jumping a bit out of his chair. Everyone else turned their attention to the man now observing the window. "What is that?" questioned the patron, now giving a very peculiar look to the blue splat marks. "Is it bird droppings?" He seemed to be talking to no one in particular. The gel on the window started to flash a bright red, confusing guests further. The realization hit Jiren, who grabbed his cash and ducked for cover behind a booth. Boom! The villain closest to window was blown clear out of the way. Deku used the opportunity and fired the grappling hook. It stuck to the top of the roof, and with a squeeze to the trigger, the device pulled him along closer to the bar. Once close enough, Deku was able to cut the line and swing inside his makeshift entrance. Deku rolled on the ground, aiming for the middle of the room. One of the lowlives ran for Deku, who was still on the ground. The young vigilante managed to grab the crook's left leg, and with some force Deku rolled with his leg, knocking the crook on the ground and Deku back on his feet. The Reiju scanned the room, still holding on to the small-time villain's leg. Once he had found his prey, he let their eyes meet for a brief moment before his own began to light up with a piercing, green glow. Without breaking his gaze, he snapped the villain's leg, rendering him unable to fight, and walked slowly towards the criminal broker. The bartender grabbed the largest bottle he could find on his shelf and charged at Deku, screaming at the top of his lungs. Unfortunately, his battle cry betrayed him and Deku grabbed him by the wrist and arm and flung him across the room. Deku could hear multiple footsteps running up the stair in the other room. He took out a small cylinder object and threw it at the door. Upon impact, a large foam erupted from the canister, blocked the door and barring anyone from entering. Looking back at his target, he stormed him at full stride. Once he approached the man, he grabbed Jiren out of the booth he was using as a shelter and pinned him to the ground. "Hi there, I have some questions I'd like you to answer." Deku's voice was casual, and even a little chipper. Jiren started to reach for a weapon in his blazer pocket, quickly unholstering it. Deku reacted on instinct, grabbing the criminal broker's hand and twisting it at the wrist, resulting in a loud pop. "I'm sorry, but please don't do anything ill-advised. I don't want to hurt you before I get what I came for," Deku warned, allowed his voice to take on a more serious tone this time. "Who the hell are you?" Jiren screamed through his pain while he cradled his broken hand. "Calm down. Answer my questions and I won't have to break the other one. Now how can I find Tamura Shigaraki?" What the hell, why do you want to find that freak? Don't you know what he's a part of?" Jiren was perplexed, his request sounded beyond comprehension. "Well, now I'm curious as to what he is a part of." Deku continued to interrogate. "You idiot, why the hell do you want to get involved in the League of Villains? They'll tear you apart." Deku grinned. Finally, after all the late nights and sleepless mornings of digging for clues, he at last had results. "That sounds really helpful. Now where can I find him?" Deku continued with his interrogations. Gritted his teeth, refusing to divulge any info to the random hero who just blasted his way inside. "Forget it, you don't know what they'll do to me if they find out," I squealed. The Reiju's patience was running thin. He reached into his back pocket and grabbed out one of the small explosive gels. "You see this? This is what I used to blow the hole in the wall." What do you think you're going to do with that?" The broker's eyes widened as he talked. "What do you think a guy like you cares about?" Izuku tossed the gel atop Jiren's new prize. "Wait, no. Tell me what I need to know or you can pick up your money in bits and pieces." After balling up his fist and constant cursing, Jiren gave in. "Look, I don't know exactly where they meet, but I'll tell you what I do know. They're looking to expand their numbers by trying to bring in this guy who's freaking insane, though he isn't making it easy for them, so if you can find him, you'll find Shigaraki." "Who?" "The hero killer, Stain. Last I heard he was making moves in Hasu." Suddenly a huge gust of wind was blowing in the room, interrupting Deku's interrogation as a string of spotlights were shining down from the sky. Deku let go of Jiren and looked out a window to see that police were surrounding the building, even bringing a helicopter with them. They looked like the Special Assault Team, a tactical unit of the police who deal with terrorist and villain activity. They were geared up and looked ready to take heavy action. But before Deku could come up with a sound strategy, one of the walls exploded. It was too late now. They breached the wall and held both Deku and Jiren at gunpoint. "Hands in the air, and do not move." One of them screamed as Deku did as he was told, raising his hands slowly in the air. "Crap, what are you going to do, Deku? It looks like they've got you completely surrounded." May relayed back, biting her thumb out of stress. "Kick the suitcase over to us and remove your mask." The officer in charge thundered out these orders and Deku slowly kicked the suitcase at one of the officers, but did not comply with the second command. One of the SAT officers put away his rifle to pick up the suitcase and slowly opened it to view its contents. "It looks like money, sir, and..." "Oh crap." The SAT officer slowly backed away from the box. "Sir, it appears there's a bomb located under the bills." Jiren started to throw a fit, cursing and swearing up a storm. "Those damn bastards. No wonder they wanted to pay me so much. When I get out of here I'm going to kill that pencil neck fuck GAHHGZZZT. Jiren was subsequently tased. The green-haired hero had to think of an exit strategy, or else his life of heroism would end with him behind bars with the same criminals he put away. All of a sudden the suitcase started to beep. The room instantly became silent as they waited for confirmation of what they just heard, no one daring to make any sound. Beep. They remained frozen in place. It was just as they figured. The bomb was counting down to detonation. Beep, beep. "You two, grab the suspects and everyone else clear out." The captain commanded, and as the room started to clear, two of the SAT officers started to approach Deku. Before they could approach Deku, large pair of hands smashed through the brick wall, grabbing Deku and pulling him out of the building. Deku looked up to identify his mysterious guardian angel, and was surprised to find Knuckleduster holding onto him as he leapt onto the next building. "All right, kid, we'll split up from here. Try and not to get arrested, all right?" Deku nodded as they both departed in opposite directions, Deku leaving through a side window. He looked back and saw police scrambling out of the building, some with criminals in handcuffs. They were all eyeing the bar, at a safe distance and just waiting for the building to explode. "Freeze." Deku froze in place, not daring to move a muscle as someone had managed to get the jump on him. "Now turn around slowly and put your hands in the air." Deku did as he was told. The man sounded as if he was alone, so disarming him at an opportune moment should be easy. As he was turning around, Deku observed the detective. He merely wore a simple trench coat over his police attire, surely not an undercover one then. Once they came face to face, Deku's eyes widened with shock as he recognized the detective. Now slowly remove your mask and any and all devices you have, and don't bother using your quirk either. Deku didn't do anything the detective ordered him to do. Instead, he just stood there, thinking desperately of a plan to escape. I said take off your helmet. The detective raised his voice threateningly at the vigilante. Boom! The bomb had finally gone off in a fiery explosion, which sent the establishment tumbling down, and Deku took this moment to rush the officer, quickly disarming him and throwing the weapon out of reach. The young hero then ran to the side of the building and jumped onto a neighboring rooftop. I would appreciate it if you didn't follow me, Deku called out to the detective, as he ran away from all the chaos of tonight's events. After a long, grueling time of evading law enforcement, Deku made it to the train station, just barely missing the train and having to wait for another one. It was a relief as he approached the loft, choosing to enter from the front door this time since he was dead tired from earlier events. As soon as he entered, he shoved right back out the front door by May. Oh good, you're finally home. Let's go, your mom wants us to come over for a late-night supper. Izuku was crying internally as May told him of the change of plans. But Hatsumi, it's 8 o'clock, Izuku whined, something he usually tried to avoid, but the boy was tired. Wow, I didn't know to be a hero meant being too busy to spend time with those precious to you, Izuku. The poor boy simply sighed in defeat and followed his pink-haired companion. As they started to make their way over to the Midoriya residence, the pair started to make small talk with each other, discussing things like May's new inventions or Izuku's new friend that he had made tonight. So, do you think you'll ever see Mr. Smiles anytime soon? Izuku thought about Knuckleduster and wondered why he was willing to come back and save him. I don't know, but I hope I do. After all, it would be nice to have someone out there willing to lend me a hand, you know. May looked at Izuku's bruised hand. His knuckles were white and slightly swollen. Yay, someone who can help you take care of yourself so you don't come back filled with bruises and cuts. My babies can only do so much, Izuku. She gave him a slug in the arm. Oh, maybe I wouldn't have so many bruises if you'd stop hitting me, he joked, feigning injury and clutching at his arm. May erupted into a fit of giggles at his dramatics. As they enjoyed their company together, May's phone began ringing. Taking it out, she saw the caller ID was their Gravity user friend, Uraraka. What's up, 0G? Oh my god, finally. I've been trying to get hold of you for a while now. Uraraka was talking loudly and frantically, so loud that Izuku could hear her from where he stood, and it sounded like the end of the world was happening around her. Geez, calm down, relax. What happened? Did glasses finally make a move? Hatsum-chan, this is serious. I think I screwed up freaking badly, she continued. On the other side of the line, she was at home pacing back and forth, biting her fingernails in frustration. Is Izuku with you? Oh, yeah. He's right here next to me. Put him on. May passed the phone to Izuku, who was curious as to what the big fuss was all about. Hello. Finally, do you know how hard it's been to get a hold of you? What happened to your phone? Izuku reached for his pocket, only to find it empty. Izuku started to panic as well. The last place he had it was back at Yokohama City. Crap, I think I dropped it when I was changing out of my uniform. Izuku thought, feeling a cold sweat overtake him. I misplaced it. Deku laughed softly, hoping to play it off. This is no time for jokes, we got some serious crap going on. Sorry, what's wrong exactly? I think I screwed things up for you and Hatsum. Huh, what do you mean? I don't know how, but apparently you got somebody's attention at school and he sounds very adamant about finding you. What do you mean? Izuku asked, suddenly very concerned that somebody was trying to track him down. Hey, he used his quirk on me, trying to find out info on you. Izuku stood in place, worried about the dangers he might have put on Uraraka. Hatsum stopped walking when she noticed her partner had a look of unease on his face. Are you alright? Was he a villain? Izuku was trying to think of any reason someone would try to go through Uraraka to get to him, or even how they would know she was connected to him. No, at least I don't think so. He was a student at UA. I don't know what his problem was, but he was keen on meeting you. His quirk messed with my mind and he tried to get me to take him to you. If it wasn't for Katsuki storming in and breaking his concentration, and his quirk's hold on me, I don't know what would have happened. Katsuki. Bakugo Katsuki. Kaken. Is that what you just called him? Do you guys know each other? Uraraka asked, very confused. Izuku turned to see May staring at him with a worried look on her face. She remembered hearing that name, from two different people. First from Izuku as his most treasured friend, and second from Uraraka, as the UA student whose explosive quirk was matched by his explosive ego. She found it hard to believe that both of them were describing the same person. Why, he's my best friend. Izuku reluctantly answered. Wait, really? Uraraka found that information surprising, but continued on. You mean the same guy you knocked the living daylights out of is your best friend? Are we talking about the same guy, because he was not giving me friendship vibes when he heard your name? Why, you said my name. That's the thing, I called you Deku and he looked at me like I insulted his mother or something. Izuku simply sighed, pinching his nose as he took in what Uraraka was telling him. Yay, that'll do it. But I don't think it's anything we have to worry about right now. Izuku placed one hand on Mei's shoulder to reaffirm her everything would be alright. Are you sure? 'Cause to me it sounds like he wants to kill you. Uraraka was completely baffled at Deku's calm demeanor as she recalled Bakugo's reaction to hearing that name. Deku, there's no way that it could be him. I couldn't have been beaten by him. Bakugo's eyes felt like they had penetrated Uraraka's very soul. It was the first time that she had ever felt intimidated by him before. The explosion user was trying to gauge some form of deception from her. Or maybe he had just misheard her, but he knew he didn't. With a grunt he turned around and started to walk away. She could feel his rage still radiating off of him, his head tilting back to look at her with a sideways glance and simply saying, "If I find out who Deku is, I'll kill him." Uraraka could tell there was meaning behind those words, more than just a simple taunt like how he would announce threats to the class or even to Monoma. This time his word was absolute. Just be careful, Deku, both you and Hatsum. You've got the attention of two very persistent guys, Uraraka warned. Her tone felt very heavy, but heartfelt. Don't worry, Uraraka, I'll be ready for whatever comes at us. Ha, whatever you say, Deku. I'll see you guys later after the festival. With that, she hung up, now going to rest for her big day tomorrow. The rest of Izuku and Hatsum's walk to Miss Midoriya's home was done in silence, as they both were lamenting over the fact that they were essentially being hunted down. Once finally arriving at his caring mother's home, they entered and were welcomed with an overwhelming display of affection as Inko embraced them both. Mama Midoriya was excited to see Izuku. Ever since he started to work for Aizawa, his visits had become scarce. Mei on the hand made it a priority to visit Inko as often as she could, giving her updates on Izuku, well as much as she was able to divulge. Well, if it isn't my hardworking young man and Mei. Oh, you are looking lovely as ever. Inko looked at Mei so fondly that Izuku couldn't help but chuckle. Mei, on the other hand, nervously scratched the back of her head, not used to people complimenting her looks since she was usually covered in oil smudges and reeked of fumes. I'm so glad that you both were able to make it even though it was kinda last minute. I was afraid that it might be a bad time, but I just had to see Izuku, Inko explained, feeling slightly embarrassed at her own overprotective nature. Haha, it's alright, Mom. I'm sure Aizawa wouldn't mind my absence for one night. As he walked around the house, Izuku was surprised by how much he felt like a guest in his mother's home, even though he technically still lived here. Inko began to set the dinner table, requested that Mei assist her, against Izuku's better judgment. He tried dropping hints that would make her reconsider, but his mother was adamant and Mei was more than willing to help. Izuku sighed and left the two alone to go wash himself up for dinner, giving Inko a chance to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Mei. Mei, Inko spoke in a low tone. I want to thank you. Mei was confused at what exactly she meant. What do you mean, Midoriya-san? It's just setting the table. Inko shook her head, fighting back her tears. No, Mei, that's not what I mean. I want to thank you for helping my son. She paused as she was setting some silverware on the table, thinking back to her son's condition just a couple months ago. Before you came along, Izuku was in a very dark place. It pained me to see my precious baby the way he was. Izuku never really had any friends in school and he was such a shy child, but he had such a good heart, always putting the needs of others before his own, even if never benefited him. He's just like his father. Inko pointed Mei to a small shrine in the corner of the living room. Mei observed the photo of the black-haired man, who shared a striking resemblance to her only friend, as the caring mother continued to pour her heart out to Teen. Then, like out of the blue, you came into his life. I don't know how you both met, but I'm so glad it happened. You've changed his life completely. I haven't seen him so happy in such a long time. Mei truly felt happy. It was the same happy feeling she felt when one of her babies came out successful. If we're being honest, Midoriya-san, it's you that I'd have to thank for raising such a sweet boy. He's one of the few people who's actually put so much faith in me. Mei couldn't fight the crimson wave that her face was now exhibited. She never gushed about someone like Izuku before. Inko chucked at the young inventor's embarrassment, before settling back into her melancholy tone. It's why I have to ask you something. Are you both hiding something from me? Mei nearly dropped one of the plates. Izuku had made it clear to Mei that his mother must never know about his vigilante lifestyle, stating that after losing his father, Inko couldn't handle the thought of possibly losing her son as well. And no, whatever do you mean? Hatsum, I know I'm not really the smartest person out there, but a mother knows when something is different with their child. Whenever he comes home, I notice when he has a slight limp or how he rubs his arm when I'm not looking, like he's nursing an injury. Then there was that time he didn't call for 3 weeks. I started to worry that something terrible happened. Mei wanted to at least tell her about the battery, but if Inko knew that it was her fault, she wouldn't be able to be with Izuku anymore. I don't know what to tell you, Midoriya-san. It was the only thing Mei was able to say, not exactly lessening Inko's worries. It's alright, you don't have to tell me right now. Just promise me that you'll watch over my son. Mei was taken back by her request, the fact that Inko trusted her so much to watch over her son. It was very heartfelt. Mei started to think of the nights and early mornings when Izuku came in with injuries and she was always there to treat his wounds. Don't worry, Midoriya-san, that green-haired fluff of ours doesn't make a single move with me finding out. Inko smiled, glad that she had someone who cared about her son the same as she did. Thank you, Mei. I'm so glad that Izuku has such a caring girlfriend. Yup, that's me. Mei had no idea exactly what being a girlfriend entailed, but she decided to own the title given to her by Inko. Izuku was still in the bathroom splashing cold water in his face. He was thinking over Uraraka's warning. As he left the restroom, thinking of what was to come, he heard his mom laughing along with Mei, and it brought him comfort that they'd gotten along so well. He made his way over to join them. On his way over to the girls, he peered his head in his room, thinking maybe he had forgotten something important while he'd been away. Izuku flicked on the light and was amazed to find that his room was completely clean, the floor vacuumed, and his All Might figures shining as if they had just been taken out of the box. There wasn't a speck of dust anywhere, and Ko had kept his room in pristine condition, awaiting his return home at any moment. Izuku felt blessed to have a mother who cared so much for him. Before leaving his room, he noticed a stack of notebooks sitting on his old desk. They were his old quirk catalog books that he made, what seems like forever ago. He picked them up and started to skim through them. Izuku had notes on everybody from All Might to Kanamori Woods, to even Bakugo, and Izuku's mother and father's quirks were cataloged as well. The young Midoriya thought it would be best for him to brush up on the quirks he had taken notes on, so he grabbed the whole set to bring with him. After all, knowledge is power. Now he finally made his way over to the two women who graced his life. Haha, no way, did he really? Mei asked Inko while trying desperately to catch her breath. She had laughed so hard that tears started to roll down her cheeks. Izuku instantly regretted coming over. I'm serious, 1 year for his class photo Izuku wanted to do an All Might hairstyle, but I adamantly told him no, so what does the little rascal do? Izuku sank into his chair as the memory of the event came crashing into him along with a wave of red, hot shame. He decides to do it himself, but unfortunately he didn't really think it through, and what resulted was him ending up looking like a scared rabbit. Inko showed Mei the photographic evidence of the tragic event, making Mei clutch onto her side from laughter. Izuku desperately wished he had a quirk that allowed him to disappear away from embarrassing situations like this. The laughter came to an abrupt stop, however, when somebody decided to knock on the door, and in a rather authoritative way as well. Izuku arose from his state of self-pity and eyed the door with uncertainty. I wonder who it could be at this hour. Inko asked, puzzled at who could be at the door this late. It's alright, Mom, I've got it. Izuku suspected the worst-case scenario and grabbed the first thing off the table without anybody noticing what it was, a spoon, and casually approached the door. Steeling his nerves, he opened the door cautiously. Izuku nearly dropped the spoon as he recognized the detective from early today. Oh, good evening, Naomasa-san. Izuku tried to sound as cheerful as he could about seeing the young detective. Inko got up, surprised as well to see Naomasa, although not sharing the same deep worry her son had. Oh, Naomasa-kun, so nice of you to join us, please come on in, she said, welcoming in the detective much to the discomfort to her son, who was completely nervous about the man's presence. As they made their way back to the dinner table, Mei approached the nervous Izuku, perplexed about who the mystery guest was. Hey Izuku, isn't that the dude who tried to stop you at gunpoint? Mei whispered as Naomasa and Inko conversed privately. Yes, it is. Well, what is he doing here? Well, he's kind of a friend of the family. What do you mean? Well, he was one of the first officers there when my father was killed, Izuku weakly explained. Izuku still remained hunched over his father's lifeless body, still bawling his eyes out. 2 police cars had arrived just moments before the small squad of assassins had fled. One of the officers noticed them leaving just in time and leaped out the car to pursue them, with another one following suit. A third stayed inside the cruiser and began to relay information through the radio, informing dispatch of the situation. As this was going on, a young rookie officer named Tsukachi Naomasa approached the grieving Izuku, who stayed latched onto his father. Hey, are you alright, little guy? Izuku looked up to see the young police officer. The young child nodded his head slowly, his face covered in tears and snot. My daddy is gone, he whimpered. Naomasa gazed upon the young boy with a heavy heart. These were the moments that made his job truly difficult. Come here, buddy. Naomasa gently patted Izuku's back. The little Midoriya slowly got up and followed the law officer over the cruiser. The officer opened the back of the door and sat the grassy green-haired child inside, who was still rubbing his eyes dry with his sleeve. Naomasa noticed Izuku's shoes and couldn't help but smile. He was wearing All Might-themed ones. You like All Might too, I see. Izuku moved his arm a little bit to peek at the officer and simply nodded. Why yay, my dad and I are real big fans, he mumbled. Naomasa sat right on the cold ground right across from the boy and took out a small little keychain figure of a chibi version of a woman with black hair, a dark outfit, yellow gloves, and a white cape. She had a very cheerful demeanor, holding up her hands in a peace sign. You see, this is Nana Shimura. She was my favorite hero growing up. She used to always say no matter how scary things get, give him a smile, as if to say, I'm okay. So when I feel sad or scared, I look at this little keychain of her and remember that in the end, everything is going to be okay. The people in this world who can smile are always the strongest. He handed Izuku the keychain to look at, and the boy stared at the figure for a while before something warm was placed on his head. It was the officer's cap. You can hold on to that until you feel better, all right. Izuku nodded with a small meek smile. A group of police cars and one van came onto the scene. Naomasa got up and closed the door on Izuku, as he didn't want him to hear details about his father's murder. In the meantime, Izuku just studied the small chibi figure and at its smile as he rubbed his thumbs through its plastic hair. After a while, Naomasa came back to the small boy and told them that they would wait for his mother back at the station. Since then, he's pretty much kept tabs on us throughout the years. Izuku finished explaining. May watched the man as he conversed with Inko about random topics. So Izuku, your mom tells me you got a job helping out the eraser hero, Aizawa. That's kind of a big job for someone so young, the detective said, turning his attention to Izuku. Izuku stammered a bit on his words. He had to be careful. He remembered that Naomasa's quirk was human lie detector. Izuku knew that Naomasa would never actually use his quirk on him or his mother, but he didn't want to sound too suspicious enough for him to even consider it. Oh yeah, I guess, but Aizawa-san thinks I was worth a shot. Izuku scratched the back of his head, as he wondered if the human lie detector bought his lie. Well, I'm sure that you have your hands full, what with his injuries and whatnot. Oh yay, he really keeps me on my toes, but it's fun working with all those pro heroes. Izuku felt bad about lying to someone so kind to his family, but he didn't have much of a choice in the matter. Naomasa's focus was instantly shifted to the pink-haired girl with the weird eyes, who hid behind the young Midoriya. Well now, who's this young lady you have here, Izuku? Mei instantly tried to make herself seem even smaller behind Izuku, who just stood there confused. What's wrong with you? Izuku whispered to his friend. Oh, that's Mei Hatsum, Inko said, walking over and placing her hands on Mei's head. She's Izuku's girlfriend. He's growing up so fast. Izuku had never changed colors so fast before. He was stammering on his words, trying to come up with something cohesive. Wait, hold on. Izuku pulled his collar to help elevate some of his nervous breakdown. Well then, Izuku, I didn't expect you to be quite the charmer. And she's such a nice girl too, always keeping an eye on Izuku. I'm jealous, Izuku. I didn't expect you to have a girlfriend before me, especially one so cute. Isn't she? I can't believe my baby boy is handsome enough to find someone so caring and pretty. The two adults continued gushing over the two teenagers, and at this point Izuku broke down into a stuttering, muttering mess with a face as red as a tomato. Mei finally came out of Izuku's shadow during the commotion. Nobody noticed that she had put her hair up. Naomasa looked at the girl, having a sudden, strange feeling that he had seen her before, or at the very least had heard her name from somewhere. His train of thought was broken when Inko started to speak again. So Naomasa-kun, have you had any luck on any of your cases so far? The detective let out a sigh of defeat as he shook his head. I did get a breakthrough on one of them. Actually, it was thanks to your boss, Izuku. Izuku had broken out of his trance of mortification and was intrigued at what he had to say. I can't divulge too much information, but I can tell you I did get to meet the main focus in my other case. Izuku and Mei both felt a chilling sensation run up their spines. They had the sinking feeling that he was referring to Deku. Oh, you don't mean that scary Reiju vigilante guy that's been running around, do you? It damaged Izuku's pride a little to find out his mother didn't sound like the biggest fan of his alter ego. That's right, I was this close to catching him. Sadly, he managed to slip right through my fingertips. Naomasa looked down at his drink. To be honest, I don't want to actually catch him. He's done a lot for the areas that he patrols. He also is able to bring light in places most heroes and police don't think about checking. I actually want to thank him, whoever he is. Izuku felt his pride soar back up to find out that he was at least make some sort of difference. So does this mean you'd let him go if you ever caught him? Izuku said with a small laugh. Naomasa joined in his laughter. Oh no, of course not. I'm taking him down and throwing away the key. Oh, guess he's not that big of a fan as I thought. Izuku sulked a bit. He had a bit of hope when he asked that question, but he really shouldn't be that surprised. Naomasa was a very loyal detective. Well, don't worry, Naomasa-kun. I'm sure you'll catch him soon. Inko reassured the detective, giving him a small pat on the back. Thanks for being so supportive, Mom. Izuku internally sighed at the situation. What a mess. Naomasa stayed for dinner and for conversation after, until finally announcing that he had to turn in for the night. Before he departed, he asked Izuku to have a one-on-one talk with him. Izuku agreed to it but felt incredibly nervous about what the subject might be. So you've got a girlfriend now, Izuku. Izuku bit his tongue thinking, not this again. It's alright, I won't tease you about it anymore. Just wanted to ask you, did you know that you're dating the daughter of the infamous Superintendent Hatsum? Izuku almost had a small heart attack. Superintendent. Like the guy who's in charge of leading the set. The young vigilante tried not to fall over from the shock of this news. It was becoming increasingly clear to Izuku that Mei and his work was making a difference in criminal activity, but that didn't change the fact that they were being hunted by their friends and family. Oh really? That's cool. I didn't know that. Izuku managed to stammer out. Unable to hide the immense fear he suddenly felt knowing that girl he held dear to his heart had a father whose duty it was to try and bring him in. Hey, calm down, I didn't mean to freak you out. He's actually a nice guy when you get to know him. Naomasa placed his hands on the young teen to try and calm him down. Oh, that's really good, Izuku blurted out, not really paying attention to the words, just trying to force a smile. Would he still be a nice guy after he finds out that I'm a rogue criminal? I mean, he does have a little bit of a temper, but I'm sure that won't bother a brave soul like you. I'll just have to make sure to stay on his good side. You're not making this better, Naomasa-san. Actually, there's something else I have to tell you, Izuku. Naomasa's tone got deathly serious, as did his whole demeanor. I didn't want to tell your mother because she looks like she has enough to worry about, so I thought I'd at least tell you about it. A couple of weeks ago there was a prison break at the Tartarus. At first we thought that we had prevented a major situation, but as it turns out one of them was able to change uniforms with an inside man and murdered him in cold blood. Izuku was confused. He wasn't sure why Naomasa was telling him all this. That sounds awful, but what does this have to do with us, Naomasa-san? The one who escaped was Gachai Kamameru, but you may remember him by his alias, Spinal Tap. The moment that name escaped his mouth, Izuku's blood began to boil. He clenched his fist tightly, and his breathing began to go sharp. His eyes screamed death. Naomasa was able to quell the young Midoriya, placing his hand on his bushy green hair. Hey, easy now. I know it's frustrating to hear, but listen to me. The detective lowered himself to meet Izuku at eye level. This time I won't let anything happen to you or your mother, alright? I'll be keeping a close eye on you guys. Naomasa took out something from his pocket. It was the chibi figure of Nana Shimura. Remember this. The figure looked like it had seen better days, but its smile was ever so present, like a beacon in the dark. The people in this world who can smile are always the strongest, Izuku said, repeating what Naomasa had said to him 7 years ago, with a smile letting him know that the young boy would be okay. That's good to know you still remember. Now if you excuse me, Izuku-san, I have to get going. I've got a lot of paperwork I have to get done. I'll be seeing you now. Wait. The door flew open and Mei jumped out of the apartment, shocking both the Izuku and Naomasa. She approached the detective like she was on a mission. You absolutely cannot tell my dad where I am, and most certainly you can't tell him about Izuku. She spoke with such intensity at the officer. He was completely taken back by her forward nature. It was almost like getting yelled at by the superintendent himself. The gumshoe simply held his hands up nervously. Oh, of course, I promise. Mei just eyed the detective, uncertain if he would keep his word. You can trust him, Hatsum, he'll keep his word. Mei backed down a little but still kept her gaze locked on him. All right, but only because Izuku trusts you. He yelled, all right. See you guys later. With that, the detective made his leave. It wasn't long, however, until the dynamic duo had to leave as well, but not before being assaulted by affection once more by Inko. Are you sure you guys can't spend the night here? I'm sure it's a lot more comfortable than staying at that rusty warehouse all the time. I'm sorry, Mom, but we've got a pretty big day ahead of us. Inko sighed, feeling a little heartbroken. All right, but remember that you guys are always welcome to come over at any time. Thank you, Midoriya-san. It was nice to see you again, Mei said, an air of contentedness falling over her. With goodbyes out of the way, the duo made their way home. By this time it was really late at night. Most of the streets were dark. The people that once filled the roads were now at home trying to rest their weary eyes for the next day. Izuku and Mei walked in silence, lost in their own thoughts. Izuku was thinking about the vast amount of information he had gathered today, thinking of how he was going to deal with it, and more importantly, how he could keep Mei and his mother out of harm's way. Mei, on the other hand, was trying to come up with a way to keep Inko's promise that she had made. She wanted to do more than just sit on the sidelines. She had to somehow protect him the same way he protects others. But how? She stopped in her tracks and with her head hanging low, she grabbed Izuku by the collar of his shirt. Izuku turned around to face the pink-haired inventor. Mei looked at him with glistening eyes. Izuku, tonight while you were busy I talked to your mom. And I've learned so much about you. All the terrible things that you've gone through. When I first met you I thought that you had simply had a bad day, but after tonight I realized that it's been building up over the years and somehow you've managed to stay sane and with that smile of yours that just warms my heart. I don't know how you've managed to do it for so long. Mei started to tear up a bit, but she did her best to keep her composure. I've known grown men from my dad's line of work who would have broken down much quicker, but an 8-year-old child is able to hold it together better than most hardened men. That's why when you finally did break, you didn't know who to turn to anymore, but your mom tells me that it was me that helped pull you out of that void. Mei let go of the young boy in favor of hold on to herself, trying harder not to break down. So, sorry if it's a little hard to believe that I could help someone so sweet and kind-hearted as you. I can't imagine that the screw-up Mei Hatsum would be able to help the lovable Izuku Midoriya and keep him from going over the edge. She yelled, finally letting go and allowing a steady stream of tears to fall from her eyes. That's why I made a promise with your mom. To watch over you, and I will. I'll watch over you like the hero you were born to be. I'll be your hero, Izuku. Izuku was at a complete loss for words as he watched in awe as the young girl before him was smiling and crying, with her thumb pointing at herself with complete and utter confidence. Mei. Izuku slowly approached her. He wasn't sure what his plan was. Once close enough he put both hands on her shoulders as hers fell to her sides and gave off that smile she was such a fan of. Thank you for being my second wind. That being said, Izuku pulled her in for a tight hug. This turn it was Mei who was at a loss for words. But she didn't need any, she simply returned the embrace back, wrapping her arms around him tightly. They didn't know what this would do for their friendship, whether it would evolve into something new or simply just strengthen the bond they shared. The only thing they knew for certain is that they would treasure this moment for the rest of their lives. The rest of their walk home was in silence. They had said all they could. They were still a little sheepish about the embrace and couldn't work up the courage to face each other. Mei, who never had a problem with Izuku, found it difficult to even look in his general direction without feeling like a bumbling mess. She started to think of what could have changed, and what was this new feeling was. Izuku was thinking of every possible scenario that could happen. All at once his brain was complete mush. Okay, you've made it this far, maybe she feels the same. Or I could just be overthinking this and I'm seeing something that isn't there. Why is this so confusing? He took a deep breath and let out a mental scream to psych himself up. Then in a single leap, he turned his whole body to face Mei. Mei. His yell was probably a bit too loud, making the teenage girl jump while letting out a small yelping noise. They both were a deep shade of red, unable to do or say anything. Izuku, trying his absolute darndest, was stammering noises hoping that it would make some sort of coherent sentence. Mei, do you feel like there's something that's special between us, something that's special only to you and I? I want to know if our bonds can be stronger and deeper than that. What I'm asking is, if you would want to be in a relationship together, is what Izuku really wanted to say, but what came out was more nonsense gibberish, until he slapped himself and with all his heart he finally asked. I was wondering if after I see come back TT tomorrow, would you like to GG go and haha have a data together? Izuku was finally able to get all the words out, but Mei, still harboring a pink hue, was confused. What do you mean? We practically spend every day together. She tilted her head slightly, looking like a slightly puzzled puppy. Izuku still held his hands to his face and simply shook his head no. I mean like, no testing out gadgets or H-hero stuff. Like maybe GG go to the arcade or maybe us see a movie together, a DD day together. At this point Izuku's heart was beating so fast it activated the battery, causing his eyes to glow that bright fluorescent green. It had finally dawned on Mei what exactly Izuku was asking of her. She was completely dumbfounded. She never thought that anybody would ever be interested in her enough to ask her out on a date. The young flustered inventor quickly lowered her goggles on her face and turned away so he wouldn't see her face turn a deeper red. Izuku woke up from his light nap and looked out the window of his train, although he wasn't paying any mind to the scenery they passed. Instead, he was replaying his moment with Mei over and over in his head, pairing with the thought of Uraraka's warning and his upcoming bout with his newest foe, Stain. So much was happening so fast that it was overwhelming for the poor quirkless hero. He gave himself a quick few self-inflicted slaps to his face. Man, how did my life become so complicated? On another train headed for Kyoto, Mei was thinking about what her plan was. After all, she never thought she would ever be going back to her parents' home. But it was crucial for her strategy to help Izuku, although she was not looking forward to going back after her fallout with her father. It's for Izuku, she kept repeating. She fidgeted in her chair, completely jittery at the thought that she might have to deal with her old man again. She let out an agonized scream, unsettling the passengers around her. Uraraka was struggling with her own demons and currently very on edge, as it was 30 minutes prior to the start of the sports festival. She was trying to hype herself up. After all, her performance would help make or break her future as a pro hero and she had so much on the line. The brunette took a deep breath and cleared her mind, thinking of conversations she had with Deku. As Uraraka helped Izuku adjust back to the groove of things after his near-death experience, the rogue hero and the UA student began trying to learn more about each other. Izuku figured he might as well answer any questions the gravity user might have, since there was no point in hiding his identity from her. So Deku, what makes a quirkless kid like you want to risk life and limb trying to be a hero? I mean, you can't get paid and clearly you don't want the fame and recognition, so what is it? Uraraka asked, her curiosity bubbling over. Izuku was a little nervous to explain, telling her that All Might inspired him as a little kid and that his dad always had complete faith in him, so he made it his mission his life to be one no matter what. The UA student felt awkward knowing that the green-haired teen had a very admirable reason, and felt that hers was a little shallow. Hey, now I feel silly. What do you mean? I'm sure that your reasoning is just as noble. Well, really it's for the money, Uraraka reluctantly answered. But don't get it wrong, it's not like I'm greedy or anything, you see. My parents own a construction company and lately, they haven't had much work, so they're kinda poor. I figure that if I became a hero I'd make enough money to help my parents, Uraraka explained, keeping her head bowed. That's great, what's nobler than making sure your parents are taken care of? Thanks, Deku. That's why I've got to give it my all in the sports festival, Uraraka announced, suddenly raising her head and clenching her fist in front of her in excitement. She had a fiercely determined look in her eyes and Izuku felt like she was emitting a very intimidating aura. That's the spirit, Uraraka, just keep that attitude and you'll do amazing. Uraraka yelled in a war cry and almost startling Izuku out of his chair. The memory was enough to get the UA student worked up. She stood up ready to take on anything the festival would throw at her. The gravity user's tenacity was noticed by some of her peers. "Whoa now Uraraka, I wish I had some of your enthusiasm," Mina, one of Uraraka's classmates, called out as she walked in. Following behind her were Shiro, Kaminari, and Tsu, all of whom were surprised to see the usually modest girl with so much vigor in her spirit. "Yay, I think you could share some of that enthusiasm. I'm feeling a little weak-kneed myself," Shiro said rather meekly. "It's alright, you don't have to win, you just have to impress the heroes watching. That's what really matters," Ribbit Tsu stated. "Haha, somehow that doesn't make me feel any better," the tape user responded, somehow feeling even more pressure than before. "Hi. Well, in that case, I'm sure I'll be able to shock and amaze those pros," Kaminari said while striking a pose in an effort to showboat. "Not unless you end up making yourself look like a complete dunce like always," Gyro joined in on the conversation, not wanting to waste a good opportunity to tease the lightning user. "Hey, come on, cut me some slack, will ya? Who was it that took down all those bad guys when we were surrounded?" "That's right, it was I. Did you forget about the part where you were rendered a complete idiot due to your quirk, and that you managed to get yourself captured as well?" The yellow electric user became flustered while trying to save face. "Why yeah, but I at least got out." Gyro scoffed at his rebuttal. "You mean right after Tsu came to our rescue and surprise jumped the guy? You only managed to get in his way. Thankfully the teachers were able to come to our rescue before that guy could do some serious harm." Gyro's explanation left Kaminari feeling discouraged. He looked down at his feet and pressed his fingers together. "You don't have to sound so mean about it." He whined under his breath. The earjacker patted him on the back. "At least you make a good lightning rod." This was enough to lighten his spirits back up. "Thanks, I guess." The gathered members of Wano laughed at Kaminari's dense nature. From out of the corner of her eye Uraraka noticed that she was being observed by Bakugo, who kept his eyes locked on her. There was something ominous about him that she couldn't place a finger on. But what? She was never intimidated by him before. In fact, she was one of the few who waved off any threat he made. Uraraka was sure that Bakugo was a mind reader because the moment he realized she was staring at him he started to approach her direction. Oh crap, oh crap. Uraraka freaked out. Surely he wouldn't try anything as long as she was surrounded by her peers, right? Bakugo picked up the pace slightly. What was she thinking? Of course he would try something. This was the walking nuclear bomb with a short fuse. He would be willing to pick a fight with kittens if he wanted to. Thankfully her savior was there once more to rescue her from the fire-breathing dragon, and her shimmering knight was none other than the upstanding gentleman, Tenya Ida. "Uraraka-chan, I just wanted to say good luck. I know that you've been working really hard these last couple of weeks." The young girl's worries were washed away due to his presence and were replaced with exhilaration. Thanks Ida-kun, I hope you do well too." Ida scratched the back of his head and smiled at the compliment. "Thanks, I just hope I can make my family proud. I especially want to impress my brother. I'm sure you'll do excellent." Uraraka encouraged her friend with glee in her voice. Mina, who was observing everything, scooted over to Gyro to whisper in her ear, although it was loud enough for everyone close by to hear. "Hey Gyro, do you ever notice that Uraraka gets super peppy when Ada comes over?" The pink-hued classmate snickered. "Huh, yeah, I think we got ourselves some high school sweethearts." Gyro had a smirk on her face as she whispered with Mina. Uraraka, hearing everything, turned around to glare at her friends and revealed that her face was the same pink hue as Mina. "Wait, no. It's not what you think, we're just really good friends." "Oh yay, how good of friends, haha." The collective class looked to see Minta, who nobody noticed, was sneering at whatever unadulterated thought that brewed in that perverted mind. Out of retaliation, Uraraka hurled the purple gremlin at the wall. "Uraraka-chan, was that really necessary? I mean, I understand that Minta was way out of line, but as heroes in training we should try to act a bit more mature," Ada said, motioning his arms in the signature karate chop motion he was prone to do. "You're right, sorry Ada-kun. I should have known better," Uraraka lied while flashing Ada a pleasantly fake smile. "Next time I'll just hit him with one of the chairs so I don't end up touching the small weasel." Ada was forcibly pushed out of the way by none other than Bakugo. "Hey round face, don't think that what we discussed the other day is over. I still want some answers," Bakugo said very obtrusively. The unnerving feeling came back to the gravity user almost in full force. Ada came in front of the two feeling slightly irritated at his fellow classmate. "Bakugo, what is the meaning behind this rude behavior?" "Hey shut up Four Eyes, this is between me and her." Bakugo got up in Ada's face, ready to throw down with him. "God, give it a rest Bakugo, can't you shut that trap of yours for like 5 minutes? Monoma groaned from the other end. "Who the hell told you to butt in, you copycat freak? I'll make sure to destroy you." Monoma got out of his chair, with a smirk across his face, and sauntered over to where Bakugo stood. "Ha, why wait. I'll show everyone here that you're unfit to be a hero." Just like always, Monoma would fan the flames, rather than help diffuse the situation. Things were getting out of hand in the small break room. "Hyyyyyy." President Mike's voice could be heard booming through the whole room, and everyone looked up to the ceiling. "It's starting," Uraraka thought. The door opened and someone from UA told all of class 1 that it was time. Izuku and Mei looked at their phones as an alarm they had set earlier went off. Coverage for the festival was beginning. They quickly inserted their earbuds and watched the live stream start. They both had promised Uraraka that they would watch her perform and cheer her on. Present Mike was getting the audience fired up with his co-commentator, Aizawa, who was just there. Now let's bring out a first-year student starting with our hero course. Everyone was cheering and shouting as the class of one emerged from the stadium tunnel. Uraraka was the first to come out. Her face was lit up with determination, eager to start. As more and more of UA students piled out, the first years looked around them and were stupefied by the roar of the audience. This really was their time to shine. There are so many people here, I think I'm going to be sick, Uraraka said with a hand over her mouth. Ada rested his hand on her shoulder. Relax, think of it as part of our hero training. After all, we have to learn how to perform well with an audience watching, don't we? Uraraka nodded her head in agreement. Man, he's really going overboard with that praise. Doesn't it make you a little nervous? Kirishima turned to question Bakugo, who was a complete 180. No, I'm getting more into it. Bakugo wore a fearless grin. And now give a welcome to the support course class. Back on the bullet train, Mei slumped in her chair with a grunt and a sigh as she stomped angrily at the floor. Man, that could have been me out there, Mei muttered under her breath. Once all the students were finally gathered, the announcer for the first years was revealed to be Ms. Midnight. Now let us hear the pledge from the first years. And the speaker will be Bakugo Katsuki. As Midnight announced Bakugo as the speaker, all of Class 1A's heads snapped to where Bakugo stood, wondering what self-centered thing the foul-mouthed blonde would say. Bakugo casually walked up to the podium, his hands in his pockets. I don't get it, does he get to make the pledge? Kaminari asked nobody in particular. Well, he did get the highest mark at the entrance exam, Zero answered. Once he got at the top, he cleared his throat and took a sharp inhale. I pledge to become number one. Everyone in Wano figured he would say something so narcissistic. Izuku hit his head on the subway window, feeling the shame the rest of Wano was feeling. Well, I guess it's to be expected. He mumbled to himself, still. The old Kakin would have laughed while saying that. I wonder what's changed him. Izuku sure knows how to pick his friends. Mei looked at her phone confused. The rest of the UA students became irate with Bakugo, screaming that he was overconfident in his abilities and throwing challenges his way. Now with the introductions out of the way, let's start with the games, Ms. Midnight announced. They all looked up to see a billboard light up as a roulette spun around until it landed. The obstacle course. As long as you stay on course, you're free to do whatever you'd like. The R-rated hero exclaimed while licking her lips. Now take your places. The gate lit up and the students arranged themselves behind the starting line. One by one the lights started to fade away, and Uraraka's heart beat faster and faster. Once all the lights blacked out, everyone made a break for it in the narrow hallway. The hallway proved to be difficult as the students struggled to squeeze through each other to reach the other side. Izuku bit the bottom of his lip as he saw his friend struggle to pass through. Mei was also filled with anxiety, shaking both of her legs hoping that her only other friend could make a breakthrough. I see, this is just already the first obstacle, Izuku muttered out loud. Hey kid, shut up, a nearby passenger called out. Izuku felt a nudge from behind and turned around to see that he unknowingly created a small viewing audience. In the midst of the skirmish, Uraraka felt the air getting crisp and chill. A sudden cold rush was fast approaching. Uraraka looked behind her to see Todoroki shooting out a huge blast of cold, and with it, the floor started to turn to ice, freezing the students to the ground. The gravity user squeaked and instinctively climbed on top of the nearest student as the ice passed right past her, freezing the poor student underneath her in place. He looked up at her with a pissed expression on his face. He's sorry, she weakly apologized as she made a quick run to catch up, trying not to slip on the ice. Izuku was intimidated by Todoroki's willingness to just get rid of a majority of his competition. That ice kid is really something. He just took out nearly half of the other students. One of the bystanders exclaimed. Of course, don't you know who that kid is? Another one jumped in. That's Endeavor's kid. Huh, you don't mean the number 2 hero, Endeavor. The very same. Izuku remembered now. One day he was curious about Uraraka's fellow classmates' quirks. When it came to Todoroki's quirk, she explained that he had control over both fire and ice, but she's never seen him use his fire side. Izuku wondered why exactly that would be. Even during the fight with Namu, he still didn't use the fire quirk. Bakugo rocketed his way through the crowd, screaming at the top of his lungs, nice try half and half, but I'm not going down that easily. Todoroki looked back, surprised that so many of his fellow classmates were able to dodge his attack. Mina quickly threw a barrage of his purple orbs, using them to skip through the ice with ease. Ha foolish Todoroki, you are no match for me, now prepare to feel my signature attack. The purple blur was getting ready to show off whatever attempt of an attack he was getting ready to make when, slam, the small teen was struck by a robotic tail and was sent flying. Todoroki looked up to see that a battalion of giant robots, ranging from various sizes, loomed over them. And here the students encounter their first hurdle. Present Mike shouted, his voice brimming with excitement. Not these things from the entrance exam, Kaminari whined. Where do they get the money to build these things? Momo questioned, surprised by just how far UA would go to hold an impressive festival. So, these are things they had to face in the general entrance exam. I wish they came up with something more imposing if I'm going to show up my old man. Todoroki talked under his breath. He took a deep breath as he slapped the ground, a huge pillar of ice erupting from the ground that froze one of the massive battlebots. Amazing, young Todoroki effortlessly took one down with ease. Present Mike commented. Quick, we can run through its legs now that it's frozen, a random student yelled out to his fellow classmates. Todoroki looked back with a smirk. The giant robot started to collapse as the ice on its body started to shed off. It crashed to the ground with a tremendous thud, and out of the ruble, Kirishima broke through the robot's body. Ah, damn it, Todoroki, you really are a bastard. Thank goodness for my quirk, otherwise I would have been crushed. The spiky red hair yelled wildly. Ah, damn that class A, they're really filled with bastards. Thank goodness for my quirk, otherwise I would have died. A metallic student screamed as he too also emerged from the robot's body. Hey, come on, it's hard enough to stand out when we have a similar quirk. The red-hair teen cried as he kept running ahead. Bakugo looked at a drone with a devilish smile as he rocketed upwards until he met the drone right at its head, and with both hands he unleashed a huge blast, decapitating the robot. At the teacher's booth, the staff was impressed at first year's resolve. It seems most of the students ahead are from Class A, one of the teachers pointed out. All Might himself was also amazed at their abilities, but to him they were all missing something essential for the symbol of peace, something that was needed for him to pass down the torch he held. Izuku spectated in awe. He couldn't believe Uraraka's classmates were so extremely talented, as they demolished the robots with ease. Wow, this is Class 1A. They're amazing, Izuku said, and while he was happy for their progress he couldn't help but cry a little. He felt an empty void in the pit of his stomach growing. If only things could be different, he thought to himself. Izuku tried to clench his chest, but he felt the bump of the battery, and the realization hit him. Mei used to attend at UA, she should be out there as well if it wasn't for this cursed device. But without it they never would have met. Izuku shook his head as he didn't want to open that can of worms. Uraraka finally made through to the second obstacle. Her heart sank as she looked down the giant chasm before her. Oh yay, welcome to the fall, as in if you fall you are out of here, the UA teacher roared into the crowd. Mei groaned even louder as she flailed about on the train, and the person that sat next to her shot her a glare. UGHH, this is utter bullcrap. My babies would have totally blasted through this course with ease. Asui leaped as far as she could, grabbing onto one of the ropes as she crawled on the road to the next platform. My older brother is watching, so I can't let this silly hurdle make a fool out of me. Ada balanced himself on the tightrope as he used his engine calves to propel himself to the other side. The brunette gave herself a motivational slap as she started her tightroping endeavor. Wow, it's amazing, we've already got somebody who blazed through the barrier. And he did it in such a cool way. Present Mike announced, laughing at his own joke. Why are you like this? Aizawa muttered through his bandages. Todoroki observed his next challenge, which turned out to be a minefield. He cursed under his breath as he had to slowly traverse his last barrier. Aha. Todoroki looked at the source of the sinister laugh to find Bakugo had finally caught up to him. This is where your streak ends half and half. Todoroki grabbed Bakugo's wrist, freezing his arm and sending the explosive user to the ground and near inches away from hitting a mine. Behind the duo a series of explosions went off. More students were catching up to them, including Uraraka, who was exhausted, but she wasn't ready to give up. She tensed up at the sight of the students who were ahead of her. Crap, at this pace I'm not going to make it. Thoughts of letting down her parents raced through her mind. What was she to do? Giant slabs of metal rained from the sky and began setting off mines it landed on, all among the students making their way through the field. The gravity user started to wonder where these metal pieces were coming from until she remembered that Bakugo blasted one of the robot's heads off, and these parts must just now be falling to the ground. A giant piece of metal fell right in front of her. Any closer and it would have taken her out of the race. TT, that was too close to be funny. Izuku and Mei were watching keenly, silently cheering for their friend. Come on Uraraka, you can still win this if you use your head. Don't you remember what Aizawa talked about? Hey, I'm here, Uraraka announced cheerfully as she entered the loft. Izuku looked up from the 1,000-pound tome that Aizawa made him read through and study up on. Man, he's still making you read through that monstrosity? Uraraka asked, confused on why anyone would be willing to even skim through that book. It's not that bad, I've learned quite a bit from it. Oh yeah, like what? Like how to stay calm in tense situations. Both of the teens looked up to see Aizawa enter the building. I kinda got panicked the other day while doing a patrol, and needless to say I wounded up paying the price. Uraraka finally noticed that the green-haired teen had a fresh new bruise right across his face. But now he's learned from it not to just charge in like a chicken with its head cut off, right? Mei came up behind Izuku and smacked the side of his face with a small bag of ice, peeved at the vigilante and training mishap. A clear mind is more useful than any quirk, skill, or gadget, Aizawa lectured, walking over to the teens. Especially when your back is against a wall, just take a deep breath and clearing your thoughts, it can mean the difference between life or death. Uraraka took a deep breath. She looked around and noticed how high the students flew when they stepped on a mine. She thought maybe she could use this to her advantage. Looking at the hunk of metal before her, it seemed to have taken Bakugo's explosion pretty well. The gravity user picked it up and started to dig it where the mines could be and started to make a pile of the mines she dug up. The students around her looked at her like she was crazy. It didn't help that she had a very sinister smile on her face, thinking her plan would not only let her complete the course but would allow her to take first. All right, here goes nothing. She grabbed onto some of the wiring that was attached to the metal plate and made a running start, diving on the mine's plate first. The explosion was so massive that everyone looked back, scared out of their minds. Uraraka was sent hurling in the air towards the minefield exit, shooting ahead of Bakugo and Todoroki. Wow, holy crap, look at that distance. Is she ever slowing down? Present Mike screamed. No, it looks like she's using her quirk to keep herself suspended in the air and keep her momentum, but for how long can she keep it up? Aizawa was amazed at her quick thinking. Guess she learned a thing or two from watching Izuku. The bandaged hero thought. Uraraka was soaring closer and closer to victory. Unfortunately for the gravity user, she started to feel queasy and couldn't hold her quirk any longer. She cancelled it as quick as she could and started to descend until she rolled on the ground. Can't stop now. She continued to make a run for the finish, huffing and puffing at every breath as she pushed herself to her limit. As she started to run closer and closer, she started to hear a loud commotion coming from behind. The brunette turned around to see Todoroki sliding on his ice, and Bakugo rocketing towards her. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap, Uraraka yelled as the 1A's best kept closing in on her. She could feel the heat from the explosions and the chill coming off the ice. Victory was near inches away and it all could be yanked away from her in a few seconds. Izuku and Mei were on the edge of their seats cheering loudly for Uraraka. Oh man, this looks like it's going to be a photo finish. Just as Uraraka neared the finish gate, she tripped over her own feet and was sent rolling through the finish line with Bakugo and Todoroki beside her. She was certain that she had come in third. As her tumble in the dirt came to an end, she sprawled out looking at the sky feeling crushed. She had given it her all and only came in third. Aw man, that sucks, and I gave it my all. I guess thinking like Deku doesn't really apply here. Wow, that was amazing. I never thought we'd end up seeing a three-way finish. Now excuse us while we go over the footage to see who was the true victor. As they waited for the results, more and more students started to come in. A hand greeted the heroine and she looked up to see Ida, with a warm-hearted smile directed at her. That was incredible, Uraraka-chan. I can't believe that amazing plan you had. That was exceptional. Uraraka grabbed his hand and nervously accepted his praise. Thanks Ada-kun, you were incredible as well. Though I wish I could have gotten in first place, that would have been better. She looked around to see that a majority of the people coming in were mostly coming from her class, a few coming from 1B and a couple from the general studies. Congratulations Uraraka-chan. Someone from behind Uraraka said. Oh thanks ... crap. She turned around to see Shinso greeting her. Relax, I'm not going to do anything. I just wanted to give you a simple congratulations. I guess hanging out with Deku has his perks, huh? Goddammit, am I really that bad at keeping secrets? The pink-cheeked hero screamed in her head. Huh, Deku, who's that? And aren't you from 1B? How do you know Uraraka? Ada was confused on multiple accounts. Wow, you keep secrets from your friends. That isn't very nice to do. Excuse me, but could I ask what this is all about? After all, I am the class rep. This doesn't concern you, class rep. It a BSOLUTELY ... Great, why don't you go lie down for a while? Ida simply nodded with a blank expression and sprawled on the ground, staring blankly at the sky. Damn, what did you do to him? Uraraka angrily questioned Shinso. Relax, I'll release him after I give you a piece of advice. Whatever deal you have with Deku, break it off, vigilantes are scum. Uraraka didn't know how to react. Shinso spoke with such clarity in his voice. They all think they are heroes in their own right. But really they're just cannibalistic criminals. Men and women who are lost in their own selfish search for glory. They don't serve any ideals or principles, and because of this, eventually because of their heroic acts, they'll get someone killed. Then they'll just disappear in the background, unable to stomach the gravity of their mistake and with no remorse for whoever they hurt. His eyes filled with enmity as his tone sounded darker. That's not true, Deku isn't like that. All he wants to do is help people. Uraraka rebutted. Shinso wasn't at all convinced and turned around to walk away. Whatever, don't say I didn't warn you. Sooner or later he'll be like all the others. Shinso walked away, blending into the crowd of sat back up with no recollection of what just happened. What was I doing? Ada asked, looking around. Before Uraraka could answer, Present Mike came back with full force. Oh yay baby, we are back with the results, and ladies and gentlemen, it's a doozy. Give me a drum roll, Aizawa. No, Killjoy. But no matter, winning by seriously just a hair. Urarakachako. The brunette looked at the results as her name was displayed in bold, gold lettering. She couldn't help but cry out of joy. Yeah, way to go Uraraka-chan. Izuku yelled, happy for his friend's success. His train came to a slow halt. He looked up to see he had finally arrived at Hasu City. Izuku took a deep breath and stepped out of the train, ready to hunt for the hero killer. Izuku finally arrived in Hasu and wasted no time into changing into his Deku outfit, and began scouring the city, looking for any signs of the hero killer. This time, however, he didn't have the assistance of his trusty companion helping, nor did he think that Knuckleduster would even be in Hasu. Deku sighed, knowing that just this once he would have to fight alone. He started scanning all police and hero frequencies, looking for any signs of the killer. Now if I was a killer, where would I be? Deku spoke to himself before running in a random direction. Now that we've resolved our three-way tie, let's move on with the rest of our results. Ms. Midnight called to the crowd and showed off the top 42 students that had placed. A majority of them were from the hero course, with one taking the bulk of the top 20. Now with this out of the way, only those that have placed are moving on to the next event. The billboard behind the R-rated hero started to go through another roulette animation until stopping on Cavalry Battle. Her voice rang through the stadium as members of the crowd began talking excitedly amongst themselves. Crap, I'm no good at these. Kaminari slouched, fearing this was the event that was going to do him in. I wonder how exactly this is going to work with teams. Sue curiously wondered. Well, if you children stop talking, I'll explain it. Midnight barked as the students continued talking through her speech. She let out a sigh and reviewed the basic rules of the event and what is needed to advance to the next stage. As she revealed the big twist of the game, everyone's head swiveled to where Uraraka stood. That's right, lovelies, you heard right. The first place winner of the obstacle course is targeted at 10 million points. Uraraka could feel the threatening aura that surrounded her as everyone, even her closest friends, looked at her the same way a predator would look at its prey, and Uraraka felt like she was a huge fat rabbit. Now we'll go ahead and give you all time to pick your teams. Uraraka scrambled to look for someone to be in her entourage, but sadly none of her usual choices would agree, all claiming that she would cast too big of a target on her group. Ada, can you join me, right? Uraraka looked him with pleading eyes. Ada, on the other hand, wouldn't quite meet her eye as he gave his response. I'm sorry, Uraraka-chan, I would like to, but if I am to prove myself to my brother, then I have to be willing to whatever it takes to win the festive. I hope this doesn't put a rift between our friendship. The brunette gave a fake smile and lied. No, of course not, Ida-kun, I understand. I will make sure to take your points first. The thought ran through her head as he walked away from her, and her nerves flared up as she remained without a group. At that instant, Bakugo approached from behind, startling the poor girl out of her thoughts. Hey Katsuki, did you want to team up? She meekly asked, her desperation for a group quickly rising. Are you kidding me? I came to warn you that I'm going to go after your points first. After all, you getting them was a fluke. There's no way you could have possibly passed me. The blonde spat out. Uraraka was stressed enough already, so she matched Bakugo at eye level, standing on the tips of her toes to do so and staring him down. I will beat you, Bakugo Katsuki. She emphasized every word as she wanted to make it abundantly clear to him of her intention. Their stare-down concluded with Bakugo walking away without making a fuss of any kind. Wow, now that was impressive. Uraraka looked around and saw Monoma with a look of admiration plastered on his face. I didn't think anybody could talk like that to Bakugo and not get their ass handed to them. So either you've made him so angry that it isn't even humanly possible to display that level of anger, or he's got a thing for you. I saw the way you two were when I left the restroom the other day. What's the matter? Did you guys have a lover's spat? Uraraka tried her best not to puke in her mouth and knocked the daylights out of her classmate. After all, there were witnesses. What the hell do you want? Wow, is that how you address a fellow classmate? After all, I was willing to join up with you. Wait, really? It seems hope had finally come to Uraraka in the form of an obnoxious blonde classmate. But she had no room for pickiness. Why, of course, anybody who can get under Bakugo's skin like that is alright in my book. Plus, class 1 has to stick together, right? Nobody would team up with you, would they? Monoma was annoyed at her bluntness. Yay, but so what? That has nothing to do with that. Look, you want to team up or what? Uraraka shook her head. Yay, let's do this. Great, who else you got? The copycat user asked, and Uraraka simply pointed at him. Ta-da, you're kidding me. Desperate for someone else to join her party, she found 2 other stranglers that she deemed perfect for her mismatched party. Meanwhile, at the Musutafu Police Department, inside the interrogation room, Jurin was cuffed to a table with a cast on his arm. The sleazy business maker studied the armed police officer that was guarding him with beady eyes. Say, you would mind taking these cuffs off me and letting me out of here? I'll make it worth your while. The broker gave a sly smirk, but the officer didn't respond, instead looked at the two-way mirror and gave a quick nod. A massive shock jolted the criminal broker and he slammed his fist in anger. Goddamn it, at least tell that dick to hurry up. You've had me in this freaking room handcuffed to this stupid table for the past 3 hours. Jurin roared out. Anger and frustration emanated from him as he struggled to rip off the handcuffs. The door to the room finally opened and Detective Norimasa walked in the room. He asked the other officer to leave and sat down on the opposing end of the table, not yet acknowledging the broker's presence. The detective paid no mind to Jurin, but instead chose to review some paperwork he had brought in with him. As Norimasa continued to shuffle through his documents, Jurin's agitation showed and he slammed his hand down on the table once more. Damn it, stop ignoring me. Norimasa looked up from his paperwork to see that Jurin was beginning to foam at the mouth in anger. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say something? Norimasa kept his voice polite, truly acting as if this was the first time noticing the disheveled criminal. Cut the crap, your stupid psychological games aren't going to work on me. Just tell me what you want to know so I can get the hell on out of here. Norimasa set down his papers and looked Jiren right in his eyes. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to ask you some questions, and you are going to answer them as truthfully to the best of your knowledge. Hi, and what if I lie? The detective's tone didn't change as he calmly adjusted his tie. If you are caught lying to me, I'm going to ask my friend in the other room to deliver a series of shocks to you, just like the ones you felt before. Jiren flinched. There wasn't even a hint of hesitation in the detective's voice. He meant every word. How are you going to tell if I'm lying? I'll have you know I've gotten out of tougher spots than this with my silver tongue. Normally, police officers are forbidden to use their quirks on the job. After all, it sends the wrong message if we tell the public they can't use their quirks and the law can. Due to your egregious crimes, I think I'm allowed an exception. Why? Now let's get started. First off, what is your connection to the elusive Reiju? Connection? The freak just busts into my bar and starts assaulting my associates, and you want to know if I have a connection to him. I've never met the guy before. I didn't even think this guy existed till yesterday. Norimasa simply stared at him as he jotted down the information he deemed worthwhile. He kept his face even, not betraying any emotion to the criminal. Look, like I said, the guy just blasted his way in demanding if I knew anything about what happened to those poor children at that hero school. Thankfully, you guys were able to come in and rescue me before he could have done something terrible. Jiren reached for his jacket pocket slowly and retrieved a cigarette. Say, you got a light. Norimasa gave no indication that he even heard the question and continued on with the interview. That's interesting. Why would the Reiju think you'd have anything to do with the attack on the USJ? The detective spoke with a cold tone. How the hell should I know? I'm telling you guys, that freak's insane. You're lying to me. Norimasa cut off the broker's rant and motioned to the officer in the other room. A massive shock traveled through Jiren's whole body. Damn it, that FFFFUG. Alright, fine. I'll tell you what you want to know. I'm a dead man either way. Deku rested his back against a wall, panting and gasping for air. At his feet lay a small gang of miscreants, unconscious and beaten to a pulp. It was his sixth group in his short time in Hasu. Oh man, these guys just don't let up. In his search for Stain, Deku had encountered a group of lowlives and acted out his heroic duties. Unfortunately, the syndicate was bigger than he initially perceived, leaving him constantly fighting wave after wave of gang members that followed him wherever he went. Deku needed a place to lay low. There was no way he could face off Stain in his current condition. Not that he was injured, he just wanted to be in peak condition to fight the hero killer. Deku spotted a quaint little greenhouse, not the best place to hide from a criminal organization, but beggars can't be choosers. He deftly made his way over and snuck in through a side door. Izuku removed his helmet in an effort to lay low. Izuku watched a group of criminals run past the greenhouse, looking for the Reiju that's been laying waste to their members. With a smile and a small chuckle, Izuku looked around to see the amazing array of flora that was on display in the greenhouse, as if it was a miniature nature preserve. Flowers, trees, fungi, and even minerals of every kind were on display. What is this place? Izuku thought. Izuku was interrupted from his awestruck gazing by the sound of someone's footsteps approaching from behind. Out of instinct, he flipped the approaching person over his shoulder. Whoa, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sneak up on you. Izuku's poor victim seemed to be a middle-aged man who looked old enough to be his father. He had long blonde hair with matching stubble and glasses with a small frame. He had small stains of dirt on the edge of his clothes, and Izuku wondered if he could be the groundskeeper of the greenhouse. I must say that's some reflexes you've got, the botanist pointed out, a little out of breath, looking both surprised and impressed at the boy's ability. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Izuku frantically apologized while helping the poor man up. Oh, it's all right. I should have expected as much from a young hero. The man pointed at Izuku's helmet. Though I will say you look pretty young to already be a sidekick. Or is it time for internships? That can't be right. I could have sworn that there was a sports festival going on right now. The man's brow crinkled as he tried to recall the sports festival, and Izuku felt anxiety rush up his spine. He quickly tried to think up of lie on the spot. Oh well, I'm just naturally gifted, so I was able to get a sidekick gig already. The man found Izuku's lie dubious at best but ultimately gave in. After all, for what reason did the green-haired hero have to lie to him? Well, that's incredible. You kids sure are filled with surprises every year. Oh, thank goodness he bought it. Izuku thought to himself and felt himself relax a little more. Outside, another gang of delinquents circled around. It seemed like their numbers were increasing. Sad, isn't it? We've been seeing a lot more of their kind lately. Really? Why is that? Well, I'm no expert, but I think it has something to do with that hero killer running around. After all, no heroes means more punks like those walking around. Well, don't worry, once I defeat and capture the hero killer, I'm sure everything will go back to normal. The gardener was amazed at Izuku's confidence. Well now, that's some courage you got there. You must really want to impress those pros, don't you? It's what I was born to do, Izuku said firmly with a hero smile. The groundskeeper couldn't help but share the same smirk. It was like Izuku's was contagious. My, you're like a sunflower. You give off such a warm, radiant energy, just the way a sunflower would. That only made Izuku smile even more. Did you guys check in here? No, we didn't. Let's go. The villains outside were getting restless not being able to locate Izuku and started to check inside buildings for the young vigilante. Welp, looks like it's time for me to head out, but don't worry, I'll take out the trash before I leave. Deku donned his helmet once again and disappeared into the foliage. The gang members approached the groundskeeper. Hey there, Pops, have you seen a small punk walking around dressed up like it's Halloween? The groundskeeper rested his hand on his chin and acted like he was giving the question serious thought. No, I can't say that I have. The gardener was met with a knife close to his face. Careful, Pops, if I find out that you're lying to me, your little flowers here are gonna have some new fertilizer to feed on. As the villain threatened the man, one of his companions kept pushing and shoving him until he got annoyed. What the hell do you want? The villain finally barked at his companion. Boom, wasn't there like 5 of us? Where did 2 of them go? The leader of the pack looked behind him to confirm his friend's claim. Fear started to creep up on the ill-mannered thug as they heard the rustling of leaves. They darted back and forth, not knowing where the Reiju would strike. Could he jump them from behind? Or maybe an attack from their sides? Or from above? Their confidence levels took a sharp drop. One felt their knees trembling. Without warning, 2 large objects fell from the ceiling, squashing one of the thugs below. Looking closely at the gray objects, they found that it was their missing teammates, only now they seemed to be encased by some sort of hard concrete shell. What the hell happened to you guys? We were jumped, he picked us off one by one. As the group conversed with each other, the leader of the group walked back up to the groundskeeper. All right, Pops, you're going to be our ticket out of here. He grabbed a hold of the gardener and placed the blade up against the man's face once more and tried to slowly walk out the front door. Let him go. Deku snuck up on the hostage-taker from behind and firmly placed a hand on the back of his neck. Before the hostage-taker could react, Deku sent a huge volt of electricity, paralyzing the villain temporarily. Hoping to get revenge, the last conscious member tried to rush Deku. Deku aimed his glove and squeezed his fist, sending out 2 small needles, tasering the last of the gang members. Well, those are some impressive toys you got there. Did you make them yourself? The caretaker asked as he rubbed his neck to soothe away the threat from the presence of the knife. Thanks, but I can't take the credit for these, Deku nervously responded as he rounded up the unconscious villains. He placed them all in a pile, then activated one of the foam canisters and tossed it at the pyramid of villains, putting them in a temporary prison. You know, I used to be a sort of tinker myself. Really? Deku asked as he looked over his remaining gear. 3 gel bombs, 2 foam canisters and some steel marbles left. Deku was only here to take on 1 man. He didn't think that he was going to use so much of his tools on these waves of criminals. Well, that takes care of that. If you don't mind, I will be heading off. I'm sure the police will be here soon enough to pick up these troublemakers. No, the groundskeeper shouted almost angrily. Deku jumped back, startled at the seemingly nice man's sudden change of character. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. It's just, well, your scuffle left some of my poor plants a little hurt. He wasn't lying. Looking at the greenery, there were broken branches and flattened flowers everywhere that Deku had fought. Oh, I'm so sorry, let me try to help out. The vigilante hurried to grab as many branches as he could. The caretaker waved the worried Deku to cease. No, it's all right, observe. The caretaker removed one of his gloves and placed it on a tree. His whole arm started to turn into bark, and almost like magic, the tree started to blossom with flowers. The broken branch that was there started to slowly repair itself. Deku was in awe. He'd never seen a quirk like this before. He felt like a kid again and took out a notebook and pen that he kept in his pockets. Wow, sir, that was amazing. Is that all your quirk can do? He questioned the man like a curious child. My quirk allows my body to become almost one with nature. That's how I was able to create most of the unique flowers you see here. Now that he had a better look, Deku noticed that a lot of the flora didn't look like ones he had seen before. They're beautiful. Why, thank you. I was actually commissioned to make arrangements for the upcoming opening for the new Heroes Museum on Odaiba next week. That's why I'm asking you not to bring the police over. I couldn't risk them coming over and trampling over more flowers. That's all right, I understand. That's amazing though, you're probably going to see so many heroes there. Deku was getting starstruck just thinking of all the amazing heroes that would attend. Maybe he could somehow convince Aizawa to take him and Mei to visit. He had heard a rumor that there was supposed to be a section dedicated to support gear, and Mei would be ecstatic about going to check out old tools. Taking out some rope from his grappling hook, Deku wrapped it around the cluster of criminals and began to drag it out of the greenhouse. Don't worry, I'll get these guys out of your hair and you can go right back to those flowers, mister. Oh, I'm sorry, I never got your name actually. Oh, it's Chibuko Kingyoso. My name is Deku. I hope to see you there at the grand opening of the museum. Maybe I'll be able to show you who makes these amazing gadgets. The now named caretaker Chibuko gave a small smile. That would be nice, he responded and idly reached out to gently touch a brightly colored flower. Thinking that he was far enough away, Deku stopped dragging his pile of lowlives around and began to call for police, until he started to get this unnerving feeling around him, like somebody was watching him with murderous intent. Deku turned around and there he was, the man he searched all day for, the hero killer, Stain. Back at the cavalry battle, things were getting intense with only 5 minutes left on the clock. Uraraka was still able to hold on to her 10 million points, all thanks to her teammates Yuga Aoyama, Fumikage Takoyami, and Nito Manoma. Though it was proving more difficult with each passing second, Bakugo had been going after her this entire time, grabbing the points of anyone who got in his way. Uraraka figured that in his rage Bakugo would slip up and she would be able to steal his. This wasn't the case, however. His determination was proving to be too much for the gravity user, who was running out of ideas to avoid the blonde grenade. Didn't help that Todoroki also tried to seize her prized headband. Ida launched Todoroki's team at Uraraka with blinding speed. If it hadn't been for Bakugo, those 10 million points would be around Todoroki's neck. Since then the fire and ice user kept his distance, content with picking off the rest of UAS students. "Alright guys, how are you holding up?" she asked. The boys were exhausted, especially Monoma, who was doing his best not to hurl. "I'd be better if your little private war with Bakugo didn't make me want to lose my breakfast," Monoma called out to her. Aoyama, on the other hand, had his own quirk to blame for his upset stomach. C plus difficile quesela and alair. "You're lucky you didn't already hurl your insides out," Aoyama said with a shaky smile as he too was suffering from the effects from his quirk and was getting queasy. "I hate you," Monoma stated. "Come on guys, keep it together, we've just been playing defense this whole time. I think it's time for us to show them what we're made of." "What did you have in mind, Uraraka?" Takoyami questioned. Monoma looked up at the brunette, feeling he already knew the answer to Takoyami's question. She bore her eyes on Bakugo, who returned the look. This would be their final head-to-head collision in this round. Someone was going to keep the 10 million points. Taking a deep breath, Uraraka pointed and yelled charge at Bakugo and company, who also blitzed for them. "You've got a lot of guts thinking you can take me on, round face, or are you trying to deliver that headband to me?" Bakugo whirred mockingly. "Just got tired of running away, or do you have a problem with that?" Taken. The acrimony Bakugo spewed out was immeasurable. That was a name he had never wanted to hear again, because it was the name that he gave him, and it now was coming out of her mouth. "You better give it all you got, or so help me I will destroy you guys myself," he threatened his teammates, who were more scared for Uraraka's team. Just what demon did she bring out of Bakugo? Once within arm's length, Bakugo shot his arm right at Uraraka's headband, and she did the same, hoping to grab his, but he was too quick for her, and in an instant, he stole her prized 10 million headband and backed off before she could steal his. "It's over," he yelled, backing off with his prize and holding it up tauntingly. Bakugo," Kirishima interrupted, ruining Bakugo's victory. "What?" "Well, we lost our headbands," Kirishima said uneasily. Bakugo's rage started to boil once more until he realized he was missing something as well. He reached for his headband to find that it was safely still there, but it was the ones around his neck that were missing. The ones he had stolen from other players, and now they were placed firmly around Uraraka's neck. He looked at the 10 million point headband that he stole, only to discover that it was a ruse this whole time. Uraraka knew she couldn't keep her 10 million points for the whole game, so if she was going to lose them it had to be in a way where she could get more than enough back. And who better to steal them from than Bakugo, who was eliminating any and all players that got in his way of Uraraka's points. This whole time he unwittingly had been her shield. Now Bakugo, being Bakugo, was mad about the thought of being used like this, but he could help but feel a little amazed at her strategy. This round face was proving to be more extraordinary than he had initially thought. But before he could rectify this, a buzzer rang out indicating the game was over. Midnight had announced the winners of the game, with Bakugo and Co. being in first place, Team Todoroki in second, Team Uraraka in third, and Team Shinso in fourth. Bakugo had come in first this time, but this victory didn't matter. In his eyes, he had lost to someone he had never thought he would lose to. He looked over at Uraraka, who was getting praise from her friends. Just who the hell was she? Bakugo thought. He had this feeling in his gut, almost like some sort of admiration for her. The winners of the cavalry battle were told to wait after lunch to be told what the next game would be. AWWA. She's still in the games, Mei yelled, fist pumping the air in excitement. The train started to slow down to a full stop. She had arrived at her destination. She had arrived back home. "So tell me more about these sons. Who are they exactly and what do they want?" Naomasa was continuing his interview with Jiren, who was sweating. He had divulged as much as he could. He tried lying here and there, but he had come to the realization that he just couldn't get past Naomasa's quirk no matter how hard he tried. "Well, they're not really sons in a family sense, they're more like devout followers." "Tell me more." "There's 3 of them, you already know of one of them, and they're extremely dangerous and completely insane in their own way. They try to work independently of each other, but their goal is the same: the complete destruction of hero society." Jiren finished. Overall, Naomasa was unimpressed. A lot of organizations had come and gone, all spewing the same rhetoric. What made this one so different, he wondered. "That's absurd." "Haye, I thought so too when I heard. Until I heard the stories of what they were truly capable of. These monsters might be more than able to put this country on its knees, even with your little symbol of peace you like waving around. Let's just say that little extravaganza you got going on in Odaiba. Make sure you got extra pigs on duty, cause even with an island filled with heroes, it won't be enough to stop what's coming. Jiren foreshadowed with a sinister grin. Thinking he had heard enough, Naomasa got up from his chair and left the dimly lit room. In the other room, he was approached by his two superiors. Well, I think that's all I'm going to get from him for now. What do you think? Think there's any proof to his claims? Naomasa wondered, looking at Jiren who had his head down fearing for what's to come. I think he's on pulling our chain. No way could there be a syndicate so ominous he claims that we wouldn't know about. One of the superiors spoke. He was a beast of a man towering at 204 centimeters, and incredibly built. That may be Hatsum-sen, but we can't take threats like this lightly, even if it's a bit far-fetched, the other replied. He was almost as imposing as his counterpart. He was well built. The only defiling detail about him was the massive amount of scars that covered his hands and neck. I think it would be a waste of time, Anemone-sen, but do what you think is right, Hatsum said as a light beeping went off. Hatsum checked his phone to see a notification from his home security. Somebody had entered his home unannounced. Pulling up the live feed of security cameras, he nearly dropped his phone. It was his own daughter, Mei. I'm sorry, I have to go. Something important has come up. Hatsum quickly excused himself from the two and ran towards the door as fast as his giant legs could take him. Mei became lost in a sea of old memories, back when she used to be a part of a happy family. She found herself looking at an old family picture from when she was younger. Her mother had put her hair up in a twisted ponytail and had her wear a silly summer dress that she absolutely hated. Maybe if she knew it would be one of the last times she would see her, maybe she would have made a better effort into taking a nice family picture instead of displaying a massive pouty face. The young inventor wondered how her mother was doing. She hadn't spoken to her since she moved out. Her mom traveled the world as an artist, and that's probably where Mei got her creative side from. Mei set the photo down to make her way over to her old bedroom. It was still the way she left it, an absolute utter mess. Bits of scrap metal littered the floor, the walls were lined with blueprints of past babies, and her desk was an unorganized jumble of papers. She approached her desk to open one of its drawers. Inside was a little tab revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a little jar which contained some sort of green glowing fluid that glimmered just like the battery. Mei figured that it would come in handy later on. She then turned her attention to scour the room for blueprints that might be useful. Mei looked under her bed to find a massive black case that she dragged it out with a huff. The thing was heavy. She peered at the colossal container with disgust. She knew very well what the contents were, and if she had her way she would rather have forgotten about its existence for as long as she lived. But she made a promise to protect Izuku no matter what, even if meant reliving bad memories. Inside was everything her father had made her prepare for the hero course, books and items meant to help her become one. But she rejected them as she didn't want to be a hero. She wanted to make babies. It was what brought her joy in life. Seeing something that she had made with her own two hands come to life. But her father never understood that. He only saw them as distractions. If it wasn't for her mother, Mei would have never have had the means to continue to work on her babies. When it came time to pick a high school, Mei had looked to study somewhere where her talents could truly shine, like Island. But her father ultimately rejected the idea, stating that he was going to send her to UA. And the decision was final. Working with her mother, they had finally been able to coax her father into letting her at least join the support course. It had taken some time, but Mei just wanted one chance to prove to him that she could be a hero in a way, using her gadgets to do so. He reluctantly agreed, on the condition that if she were to fail he would pull her out and send her through the hero course. It didn't take long, however, for the young inventor to start experiencing screw-up after screw-up, and before long her father sent in a request to have her transferred. But Mei was persistent as well. She was going to keep trying for as long as she could. Nevertheless, her home life grew worse. She would constantly come home to disapproving glances from her father and lectures on how every Hatsum before her was a hero in one form or another and that Hatsums could only be heroes. Mei took that as an ultimatum, prompting her to leave the comfort of her family's home, hoping to leave it all behind. Mei stared at the container and began to unlatch the case to peek at its contents. Suddenly every door and window clicked and was followed by a loud shutter slam. The home's security was in full effect and it had trapped Mei inside. Oh, crap. The Pinkette rushed at the nearest window to try and pry it open. But it wouldn't budge. Mei had to think of an exit strategy or else her father would find her and it was going to be the last she would ever see of Izuku because, after recent events, there would be no way on earth he was ever going to let her out of his sight again. The young inventor looked around trying to find some tool to escape, then an idea hit her. She bolted to the garage, which lucky for her wasn't locked. Inside she found her heavy-duty tools she used to make her big babies. Unfortunately, they were kept away under padlock, but wasn't going to stop her. With a spark in her eye, she ran back to her room and frantically rummaged through her desk drawer to find a can of compressed air. With that and the biggest hammer she could find, she rushed to the garage. Holding the can upside down, she sprayed the lock until it began to frost over. Once empty, she lifted up the hammer and battered the lock until it gave way, shattering it open. Mei swung the door wide open and gave out a smile. Deku has his share of dangerous fights, more than he would be willing to admit. He's faced foes with dangerous quirks, villains with a strong sense of bloodlust, from the most ruthless to the most cunning, and in all those fights he had never felt fear like this before. There was something about Stain that made him come off more as demonic than human. Stain reeked of dried blood, like a walking carcass. It was clear that he had just killed someone and was already looking for new prey, and he had found it in Deku. Another fake. Stain growled with a deep raspy voice, eyes gleaming with a hellborn aura. The hero killer slowly reached for a blade on his back and Deku got ready for a swing from it. But it was a feint. Deku was only barely able to react to the 3 knives Stain threw, managing to roll out of the way. After dodging the attack, Deku looked back to find Stain had disappeared from sight. Then suddenly Stain was right behind him, sword drawn and ready to swing. Deku used his right arm to block the swing. He was lucky Mei made the suit strong enough to block most bladed weapons. Yet it was still able to pierce through the suit enough to give Deku a deep cut. Stain tried to pull his sword free but was unable to do so. He swapped tactics and quickly retrieved a second sword, ready to plunge it straight into Deku's heart. The Reiju was ready to live up to his name and shot a strong bolt of lightning from his palm, knocking the villain clear down the alleyway. Deku yanked the sword out of his arm, wincing at the pain it caused him. Before Deku was able to properly recover, Stain was already charging at him once more. Deku used the sword to defend himself, clashing their blades together. Sparks rained in the air as Deku was doing his best to block each swipe, but Stain was way too skilled for him to effectively do anything. Stain jumped in the air and plunged the blade right for Deku's head. Deku was able to block the sword from cutting into his face but was ill-prepared for the spikes on Stain's boot, which hit him with a swift kick right to Deku's side. In retaliation, he grabbed the hero killer by his arm and electrocuted him with 1,000 volts, and once the shock subsided Deku pushed the villain off of him and began backstepping to a safe distance. The vigilante observed the killer's steaming body, sure that he wouldn't get back up. The killer slowly raised his hand and revealed a small pocket knife. The blade came out with a small click. Deku stayed his ground ready for Stain to pop up and make a lunge for him. Deku still proved to be the unluckiest person as the blade was ejected from the hilt and drilled deep into Deku's shoulder. IHHH. The young boy screamed in agony as he tried to remove the blade that bored deep into his shoulder blade, but it wasn't deep. He tried to lift his arm but doing so caused an immense amount of pain. There was no way he could continue fighting Stain in this condition. It hurts, doesn't it? Deku's attention snapped over to Stain, who was slowly getting up. I was trying to go for your neck. I guess that shock affected my aim a bit. Don't worry though, I'll make sure to end your suffering as soon as possible. Stain retrieved one of his swords and leisurely approached the wounded wolf, trying to limp away. That's right, hero killer, get him. But make him suffer first. One of the gang members had regained consciousness and had been watching the Reiju get eviscerated. And in a flash, the hero killer sliced through the cluster of goons with a clean cut. Deku watched in horror as the defenseless crooks were killed in an instant. All forms of scum must be purged, Stain uttered under his breath. Deku tossed a gel bomb in front of the ruthless murderer and upon its explosion, the vigilante made his escape. Stain has also taken cover from the explosion and as the dust settled the hero killer looked down to see blood droplets had fallen onto the ground. A wicked smile sprouted on his bloodstained face. The last of the UA students stood waiting for the final event. Many were standing proud, thrilled to have made it this far, while others remained just as nervous as when they first started. Ms. Midnight appeared to present the last event, a one-on-one mock battle, a true test of their strength and abilities. Uraraka sunk a bit, looking at the rest of her classmates that all had incredible quirks that would be well suited for battle, unlike hers. But she was determined not to let that fact bring her down after she made it this far. The holographic billboard started to turn into a tournament bracket. Names shuffled around until they revealed the matchups. The young heroine's heart sank at the last match, where she would go up against Bakugo. After spending the whole festival getting on his bad side, she was not looking forward to this. Uraraka looked over to see the blonde staring back, eager to start his match with her. How unfortunate, Uraraka-san. I wish you the best of luck. Ada comforted the poor gravity user. Her eventual suffering would be on hold. The first matchup of the event was Nido Monoma vs Shoto Todoroki. Monoma's face was covered with a snarky smile. Finally a quirk worthy of showing off my talents, he thought to himself. Todoroki, on the other hand, didn't seem to give an iota of care. He merely searched for his father, only to find him staring right back at him. It was clear his father was evaluating everything his prodigal son had accomplished thus far, and he was clearly unimpressed. The students were told to clear the arena, as the battlefield needed to be made. As Uraraka pondered about her upcoming battle, she couldn't help but think about what her classmates must be going through. Shiro and Yaoyorozu were clearly nervous, with Yaoyorozu trying to overthink every step of her strategy. Ishido, Aoyama and Kaminari tried to play it cool, acting like they were going to take down anybody who got in their way. But anyone who was paying attention could clearly see through their facade. Monoma was acting full of himself as always, gloating that he was going to outperform all of us by showing of our quirks better than we could. Kirishima didn't hide the fact that he was a bit nervous, but he was still very confident and kept up his optimism up. It was actually inspiring for others to see. Takoyami was standing in the corner as he tended to do. Now as for the last three, Ida, Todoroki and Bakugo. All three radiated this aura's sort of fighting spirit. Ada had to give it his all if he were to live up to his family's name. More importantly, he wanted to show his older brother just how far he's progressed. Bakugo was ready to announce to the world who he was, and more importantly, what he was capable of. As for Todoroki, well, Uraraka wasn't quite sure what his resolve was. Uraraka was always wanted to ask, but he was never on for conversation. The door to their break room had opened with a staff member coming and asking for Todoroki and Monoma to come with him. As they left, it had occurred to Uraraka that for as long as they've known Todoroki, not once has he used the other half of his quirk before, like there was something about it that was holding back from doing so. The battlefield was set, both combatants had arrived on opposite ends of the stadium. The rules were clear: win by either knocking out their opponents or knocking them out of the arena. As soon as the battle had commenced, Todoroki had decided he wanted it to end as quickly as possible. He coated the whole battle arena floor in a thick layer of ice, hoping to freeze Monoma in place and rendering him unable to fight. Much to his surprise, the Phantom Thief was rather quick on his feet, springing in the air at the last second and charging it for Todoroki like a lunatic. Todoroki whipped out a flurry of ice-cold winds at Monoma, hoping to slow him down for a direct frost blast. With Monoma still fast approaching, Todoroki summoned a pillar of ice to block his access, but Monoma came wrapping around the ice pillar, surprising him, and lunged at Todoroki. The half and half backed off as quickly as he could, but within a fraction of a second the copycat grazed the tips of Todoroki's fingertips, and it was all that he needed. Sensing he could be in trouble, Todoroki didn't bother to hesitate. A giant wall of thick frozen ice that spanned the entire half of the stadium appeared. There was no possible way that Monoma could have dodged that, not at that size. Deku was in a deep state of frenzy. He had lost a lot of blood trying to get away from Stain, at least until he had devised a better strategy to beat him. For now, having found sanctuary in what seems to be some sort of round-down factory, he used the time to tend to the blade embedded in his shoulder. Man, I hope Hatsune can forgive me for this, Deku said to himself as looked over the condition of his suit and injuries. He looked like he was tossed into a blender. The vigilante retrieved some first aid supplies from one of his pouches, needed for his operation. Feeling a bit constricted, Deku removed his helmet only enough to expose his mouth. He grabbed some tweezers and a roll of bandages to begin the removal of the blade. He did his best to not think about the excruciating pain he was feeling. Attempting to distract himself with pleasant memories, he recalled a time in which he and his family watched All Might take down a massive villain. The joy he felt watching his number one hero come out victorious. Deku wondered if he would be that great of a hero. Right now there was only so much he could really do. Even with maze babies, he was always afraid that he would find that one villain that he could never beat. Today might just be the day. Deku had finally removed the blade. He looked it over. It was coated in his blood. One side had deep jagged ridges meant to saw and tear through bone and sinew. Deku tossed it across the floor and began wrapping up his wound. He felt a sharp pain around his shoulder. The pain allowed for worry to start lingering in his mind. What if he couldn't do it? What if Aizawa was right all along? What if he was way over in his head? Don't tell me you're going to just give up now, after all that special training you went through. Deku was staggering, his vision was blurring, and he didn't see anyone around him. So who was talking to him? He felt a light tap on his shoulder and looked above him. It was his father, Hisashi Midoriya. I thought you wanted to become the number one hero, or was that all just stuff you said as a kid? Deku was speechless. How was it that his father was right in front of him? His dad looked back at him with confusion drawn on his face. What's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost. Don't I get a hi, Dad, or anything? He looked exactly the same as on the day that he passed. Deku tried to scratch the delusion away, but it was still in front of him. What's gotten into you? Stop playing around, son. Don't you know you've got a killer out there trying to hunt you down? Hisashi pointed to the ground. Deku looked and saw that he was trailing drops of blood, and with someone like Stain hunting him, he would be found in no time. Crap, I have to get out of here. Deku tried to make a stride for the door but flinched at the pain of his shoulder. Whoa, take it easy there, Small Might. There's no way you're going to run very far with your injuries. Even so, I'm in no condition to fight him. I'm outclassed, almost out of gear, exhausted, and heavily injured. I don't know what to do. The young hero fell to the ground, defeated. What was there to do? The best he could hope for was to injure Stain in a way where he would be unable to continue killing other heroes, or at least make it easier for future heroes to take down Stain. Hisashi smacked his son upside his head. Now you're just making excuses, Izuku. I thought we raised you better than this. Deku placed his hand on the back of his head. That hit had felt so real. The older Midoriya looked up and down the alleyway where his son took refuge in, observing how to use this location to their advantage. There, why don't you put some explosives over by those two dumpsters? You can set some sort of trap for him. Deku nodded slowly and went straight to work placing the last two gel bombs he had left in position. Once that was done, he began waiting for Stain to find him. Todoroki panted and shivered from the freezing sensation in his arm and surveyed his handiwork. The ice was massive, poking out of the stadium roof. There was no way that Monoma could recover from that. Until a huge beam of flames tore through the center of the ice barrier. Todoroki was quick to leap out of the way. Holy crap, it's cold. Thank goodness I was able to copy your quirk in time before you made it a winter wonderland over here, the smart-mouthed blonde yelled as he nonchalantly walked out of the tunnel of melted ice he created. Todoroki felt very uneasy, seeing his classmate's right side set ablaze. I gotta say, this is a hell of a quirk. It would have easily ended this match a lot sooner if you went ahead and used it. Why didn't you? You don't think I'm worthy? Do you think you're quirked too good to use it on us simply because your dad is a hotshot? Todoroki didn't respond to the boy's callous tone. Monoma whipped his hand out and unleashed a huge blast of fire aimed right at the prodigal son. Todoroki responded by putting up a wall of ice to shield himself from the blast, but the fire was way more powerful than he thought, breaking through his frost wall like catty glass and sending him flying. He had definitely underestimated Monoma's ability to adjust to his quirk. The ice user quickly created some ice to prevent himself from going over the ring and wrapped himself around it. Todoroki thought if he could somehow grab hold of Monoma without actually touching him and freeze him over, he might be able to beat him. Right now all Todoroki could do was wait out the clock until Monoma's quirk wore off. But for the Todoroki, 5 minutes felt like 5 years. Blast after searing blast bombarded him, each time the youngest Todoroki did his best to outmaneuver his own quirk. No doubt that it wasn't his quirk, it was his father's. Each flame that scorched him felt like he was getting burned by his own father. The memories of being forced to learn how to use his father's flame and the punishment he would receive if he didn't do it properly had been burned into his mind. Please, father, I don't want to do this anymore. A young Shoto fell to the ground as he hurled up what had been his morning breakfast. The young boy's right arm was covered with burn marks. How do you plan on surpassing that smiling fool if you constantly whine every single time I tell you to push yourself a little bit harder? But daddy, it hurts. Shoto begged for his father to show him a little leniency, but he would receive none. Endeavor grabbed his youngest by his peppermint hair and forced him to stand back up straight. Now do it again. Somebody used blue flames to destroy one of the family shrines. Now I don't care if it was an accident or on purpose. All I care about is the fact that you were able to produce them already at such a young age. So we're going to keep it until you do it again. Endeavor's voice was harsh as he continued to yell at his son. The sniffling Shoto extended his arm once more to try and light a fire, but was unable to keep it going for very long. Endeavor's patience had finally worn out, and he gave his son a strong backhand across his poor son's face. A door slid open with a slam, and out came Toya, Shoto's oldest brother, to stand between him and Endeavor. Leave him alone, can't you see he doesn't want to put up with your stupid training any longer? Toya yelled, his brave efforts to stand up to his brother only reward him with a stronger smack across his face. If you want his training to stop, then why don't you take his place? Toya attempted to get up. Oh okay, fine, I'll do it, only if you leave Shoto alone. Toya hesitated to say, and Endeavor only laughed at the boy's attempt at self-sacrifice. Do you really think I would waste my time trying to train a weakling like you again? You had your chance, but you didn't show any potential. Endeavor looked over to see his other 2 children cowering behind the door. Go join the other weaklings. Endeavor picked up his oldest son and tossed him across the room like he was garbage. Afterward, when his father had called it a day, Shoto snuck out of his care. He had run into his older brother Toya, who had a big bruise on his cheek. Nason, you're really hurt, Shoto exclaimed, pointing to the bruise on Toya's face. Oh, this. Nah, don't worry about that, Shoto. It's nothing. It's you that I'm really worried about. Toya grabbed his brother's arm. He saw that Shoto had more burns across it. They ran from the wrist all the way to his shoulder. Toya gritted his teeth. That big asshole, he can't keep doing this to you, Shoto. Toya started to cry on his brother's burned arm. I promise that when I get old enough, I'm going to be a hero, and I'm going to take you guys away from him. Shoto looked at his brother in admiration. You should do your best to be one too, alright. After all, I'll need a psychic to help me beat all the bad guys. Shoto loved his brother very much. Toya always cared for him as much as his mother did. Not that he didn't like his other siblings, but Toya would always be there for Shoto, no matter what. He wasn't afraid to stand in front of their father, even if it meant getting another hit. Toya would gladly take it. Endeavor knew this, and if Shoto was to grow in his eyes, Toya had to leave, which is why he had Toya taken away to a private school. It happened one morning without warning. A group of men came in, escorted by Endeavor himself. They grabbed Toya as he frantically struggled to free himself of their grasp, but to no avail. SHOTO. Toya screamed from the top of his lungs. The youngest Todoroki came to see his older brother being dragged away. Toya. He ran to try and grab his older brother. Shoto, remember you have to be a hero. But don't be. The last part of Toya's message was inaudible to Shoto, but he held on to the first part, and he made it his life goal to be the #1 hero using only his ice quirk, denying his father's as a way to tell him he didn't need his quirk at all, and destroying his father's satisfaction. Monoma noticed that Todoroki's mind was placed somewhere else, and it got on Monoma's nerves. He felt more like Bakugo than himself. The copycat fired another large blast of flames. This time, while still shooting out the flamethrower, he ran for Todoroki, creating a small platform of ice to jump off of and pin Todoroki to the ground. The seconds leading up to the second round between the Reiju Vigilante, and the hero killer were exhausting for the former, as Deku laid waiting for his plan to spring into action. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, Deku's surroundings were starting to distort, and his eyelids were becoming burdensome. I just need to rest my eyes for a bit. Deku jumped up, feeling a slight burn on his back where his father had used his quirk on him. Alright, I'll stay awake. Did you really have to use your quirk like that? Sorry, I know it was a little bit mean, but you have to stay alert at all times. You can't afford to get sloppy and careless just because your foe isn't here. Didn't that sensei of yours teach you that? Aizawa. Why yeah, he did. Deku looked down in shame. What's the matter? He's kinda disappointed in me. I went against his word the other day and he found out. I got the biggest lecture ever, then I got angry. I yelled back some things I probably shouldn't have. Let's just say I won't be surprised if I end up in an orange jumpsuit by the end of the day. Even though there was a mask censoring his face, Hisashi knew when his own son was down. Regret weighed heavily on the green-haired hero. Hisashi came over to put his arms around Izuku's shoulders. You're such a problem child, wanting to prove yourself so badly. I think you forget that you're just a child still, learning the ropes. Deku felt the sting of his dad's words. It sounded like he didn't faith in him either. He wasn't telling you to back off because he doesn't think you can do it, Izuku, but because he's the more experienced hero. He knows more about what Jiren was capable of. Aizawa isn't too good on showing it, but I think he's impressed on how much you've grown, especially for someone like you. Why else do you think he's still willing to train you after all this time? Izuku started to think of all the early mornings when the sun itself wasn't even awake and Aizawa would drag his young protege out of whatever little slumber he received just to start his training. Eraser worked the young boy down to the bone, doing daunting task after task, and when he was drained of all energy and nothing was left, Aizawa would ask the quirkless boy if he was done for the day, only to be greeted by a strong sense of determination radiating from Izuku. And in that fraction of a second, Deku could swear that he would see Aizawa smile at the boy, amazed at what he could do. Deku's little trip down memory lane was cut short by the presence of a knife at his feet. Stain had finally found him. Deku grabbed the knife at his feet and took a stance, running every single technique Aizawa had drilled into him. Running and hiding is useless, fake. Accept your death. Stain drew out one of his many blades and stormed at Deku. The young vigilante extended his arm out and pointed the knife at his foe, and in a quick flash lightning shot out of his hands. Through the knife and in a straight line aimed for the dumpster nearest to Stain, blowing up the gel hidden underneath. Deku wouldn't let up and fired another shot at the second gel once Stain was near it. With them both blown high, Stain watched for fallen debris that would hit him. With his target distracted, Deku thrust his blade at Stain, hoping to catch him off guard. It was too much to ask for, however, and he parried Deku away with his own blade. The two were locked in combat, doing their best to strike one another down while avoiding the random junk that fell from the sky. The spectacle was incredible. It was like watching a dance of blades. If Stain made a move, Deku would counter. And if Deku tried to take blood, Stain would counter back, and neither seemed willing to give in to each other's skill. Deku finally found an opening and he pounced the moment he could, driving the knife right into Stain's thigh and set a steady stream of lighting into him. Deku looked up and jumped out of the way as one of the dumpsters came down right on top of Stain, upside down, trapping him inside. With Stain defeated, Deku began calling in the authorities before feeling a warm, sticky sensation on his right arm. Somehow the hero killer was able to give Deku a huge cut across his arm. The green-haired hero reached for some bandages in one of his pockets until his fingers wouldn't budge. His knees started to shake and he fell to the ground, unable to even catch himself. What's going on? Why can't I move my BB body? Deku questioned himself when Stain's sword pierced through the metal dumpster container and began sliding down, making a loud screeching noise. The sword retracted back into the box and Deku could see Stain's glowing demon eyes staring at him. Monoma, with a gleeful smile plastered across his face, looked at Todoroki, who was still pinned down by his classmate. This whole time, I feel like you could have beaten me if you had only used your stupid flames, so tell me, why the hell didn't you? Did Daddy not teach how to use your quirk? Monoma couldn't help but laugh, knowing he was going to beat one of the top students in his class. The air in the stadium had become suddenly very cold. Even outside the stadium, people had gotten chills. Todoroki grabbed Monoma by the sides and ice started to form on him. The blonde simply laughed it off, figuring he could just use the heat to melt the ice. But nothing was happening. For whatever reason, Todoroki was making it so cold that any hope of making a single ember was useless. I reject the heat. All it's done for me is bring me pain and misery, so the only thing left is a cold void. And now you'll know what it's like. Before Monoma knew it, his whole body was frozen solid from the neck down. Todoroki rolled the frozen block of ice off of him and stood triumphantly. Amazing. This round's first winner is Todoroki Shoto. I gotta hand it to you, Aizawa. I was afraid that he wouldn't be able to pull this off. After all, he was really coming under a lot of heat. I'm glad that he was able to cool off Nido Monoma. Present Mike announced as Aizawa buried his face in embarrassment. Some of UA staff carried Monoma away as Midnight informed everyone they would take a short break to reset the arena and clear the ice. Todoroki still stood silently as people cheered around him. He was glaring at his father, who was displeased with his performance. Because of you, father, I'm going to be a hero, but not for your benefit. Todoroki thought to himself. The head of the Hatsume household came storming into his own home. May, he shouted in his deep baritone voice, and he began inspecting each and every room for his daughter, but she was nowhere to be found. He was then stopped dead in his tracks when he found the lock to her tools was forced open, and that's when he saw it. They had cut, sawed, drilled, and eventually busted her way out of her old home, and all that was left was a huge hole on the side of the house. Superintendent Hatsume fell to his knees, feeling defeated, knowing that his daughter had slipped away once more, and for all he knew, probably for good. Ever since he heard about her being expelled from UA, he figured that she would just come back home, and she would leave her nonsense behind. But days turned into weeks, and before he knew it, 2 months had passed since she was expelled. Worry overtook him, followed by remorse. There were nights where he would lie awake, wondering if it was he who had pushed May over the edge by trying to force a dream on her that she wanted no part in. Tears began to form on the hardened officer as the thought that he would never see his little girl ever again loomed over him. That was until he noticed a small folded-up piece of paper taped to the side of May's escape hole. Officer Hatsume quickly grabbed the note and began to scan its message. Dear Dad, I'm not quite sure why I'm writing this. Maybe it's because it didn't feel right just dropping by unannounced after I left. Or maybe because I technically broke in and robbed you and left a giant hole in your house. Either way, I at least want to let you know that I am doing all right. I still have a pulse and I'm currently staying with a friend. That's right, me having a friend. I have 2, in fact, and they're really nice people. Alright, now you're probably thinking why I didn't just come home after I got expelled. And honestly, there were times I was thinking about it. I figured that maybe you could use your big shot connections to get me back in, but something happened. I met this guy. At first, I was going to use him to get me back in. Not my best moment, but I was desperate and I wanted a second chance to show you that I could do this on my own. But in the end, I messed up badly, and it almost cost him his life, and it tore me up inside. I was ready to just give up, but somehow, he wasn't angry at me. He told me if I had let him know ahead of time he would have helped me. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe his accident affected his head at first. That wasn't the case, however. As we spent more time together, he never gave up believing in me, always pushing me forward. His dream in life is wanting to be a hero. All he wants to do is help people. It was like he was genetically engineered and programmed to protect people. Which is why I am going to do my absolute best to protect him and make sure he doesn't do anything stupid to get himself killed. That's why I also took your stupid training kit. You should be happy I get to be the hero you always wanted me to be. Because of you, Father, I'll be a hero, and it's going to protect someone I care about. Anyways, tell Mom I said hi, and maybe when things settle down, I'll come around and visit. I'll even bring my friend along. I think you might like him. Your genius daughter, May. The Senator Hatsume didn't know how to take this news. In truth, he now had more questions than answers. But he at least had the comfort of knowing his daughter was all right. He couldn't help himself from feeling morose. If he had shown her the smallest bit of encouragement, would she have stayed at home with her family, instead of into the arms of someone that he knew nothing about? His fatherly instincts took over. May claimed that this man was a nice guy, but how could she be sure? The superintendent knew he had to find his daughter, now more than ever. Deku still struggled to get up. Trying to lift up a single finger was proving to be impossible. Stain was still cutting through the metal container, but Deku knew he didn't have much time until he fully escaped. The Reiju had to think of something fast, otherwise, it would all be over for him, and he wasn't too keen meeting with death once again. This is your quirk, isn't it? That's why I can't move my body. Stain continued to cut through the box, now showing off his blood-cuddling grin. How very perceptive of you. Yes, it is. But sadly you won't live long enough to find out its weakness. The hero killer finally sliced his way out of his prison and moved forward to Deku. Sorry buddy, I guess this is it. Hisashi walked up next to Stain, looking at his injured son. He kneeled down to meet his son at eye level. Don't worry, you gave it your best shot. The young hero grunted. He wasn't going to let it all end like this. Hisashi extended his hand out to his son. Come on son, grab my hand and it will all be over. You don't have to keep on fighting anymore, just give in. Deku thought about his dad's offer. He reached out his hand and swatted his father's away. No, that's not what you would do. I can't just give up, even when it all seems lost. I'll keep fighting till the very end because that's how you would have done it. Because of you, Dad, I am a hero, the kind that doesn't give up, no matter what. Hisashi looked at his son with a smile, before seemingly fading away. Deku then found the ability to stand, albeit he was staggering. He looked at Stain with conviction. Before either Deku or Stain could move, they were interrupted by a flash of blinding light, and suddenly a figure swooped in, hitting Stain and knocking him back. I finally caught you, murderer. You're going to pay for all those heroes you killed. Deku looked over to see the turbo hero, known as Ingenium, had arrived. It looked like his chances at defeating Stain have gone up. Deku checked on his arm, as it was still bleeding pretty badly. He wondered if he was even able to help Ingenium at all, or if he would just be in the way. Either way, he couldn't just stand on the sidelines.